Please hit like, share, and subscribe. Now enjoy the Practical Guitarist podcast.
Good evening, Jim.
Good evening, David. How are you today?
I almost live streamed this on my Twitch just now.
Oh my
I was
God.
like, let's just hit the press start streaming button. Like, that sounds like a thing I should do. Man, it has been a wild weekend. I am actually soaked right now. I've been soaked since I came back in the house to put the boom arm on my mic stand that's here.
Oh,
Yeah, it's been an interesting night. It's been an interesting weekend. I had a gig on yesterday morning at 11 o'clock. And that went in a very unexpected fashion. So let's get into the what's new today. Let's talk about what's new. What's new? I think I can say that a few more times. If you have not done so already and you're listening to the podcast and you're having a good time, you watch this on YouTube, follow, subscribe, do whatever you got to do to follow the podcast on your chosen platform. We're in a lot of different places. At this point, it's almost impossible for me to tell you what to do. If you're on YouTube, I can tell you to click the notification bell, though. That's the one thing I can tell you.
That's right. And if you're on iTunes, please give us a review. Even if it's a negative one, it'll help us. So thank you.
Agreed. Facebook, we have a Facebook group, too, and it's active. Join. Have fun. And we have a Discord, too, and you can find information about the Discord in the Facebook group. So if you're into Discord, I'm going to run that, basically.
We're Discording tonight.
Yeah. So we actually record on Discord. All right. So you and I both just talked, and we said like there wasn't a whole lot of what's new going on. I'm actually kind of at a crossroads right now. So you got the Kemper last week, and that was like a big deal. I am sort of like so I went through this gig this weekend, and we'll talk about that in the gig report. But I used equipment I already had, and there were some shortcomings there, and I think they could have been overcome. And I think that I might take some steps to mitigate that, only because I don't know how long I'm going to be financially viable in this particular avenue of doing things. However, it is good fun, and the fact that I can just like be super mobile is cool. So I'm actually starting to look at battery PAs again. We'll talk about that as part of the gig report. And then I'm looking at digital solutions because I'm kind of like, I have a great pedal board, and for gigs like that where you got to go into a PA, I got to have something that I can use that is a little bit more easy to manage. And we'll talk a bit about that. But basically what had happened was I was playing unplugged, and I sort of made a decision that I wanted to play electric, and was having issues finding something that could take 9-volt power. And take 9-volt power well, because actually one of the devices has a 9-volt battery jack, but it doesn't like batteries. So that basically is what led me down that path. So I've already kind of like made up my mind. I'm basically looking at two items. One would be the Two Notes Torpedo Cab M, because they've added amp modeling into that. So now you can do preamp, power amp modeling inside the unit, and then route that out to your existing Two Notes cabs, which I already own some of those. I'm very happy with my Two Notes stuff. And I think it would be a great tool just to like you have as a backup. You can stick it in your gig bag. You can do a bad situation as long as your pedal board's still working. Jack in, you're good to go. So there's that, right? And people are going to laugh because this is like me coming full circle, right? But I am looking very hard at the HX Stomp. And I think the HX Stomp might win only because it does a lot more. So it might get use outside of just being a backup solution. So I'm thinking about it. Like, it's not something I'm doing yet. I'm still trying to sell that Mesa Boogie cab. I got a guy that reached out to me yesterday. All right. Well, let's talk about this. This could be the what's new for our listeners. This guy reaches out to me on Reverb and he goes, dude, your cab is worth like $420. My response is, dude, my cab is worth like $550. And it's, he goes, well, the price guide says a Mesa 1x12 mini recto cab is worth like $420. I politely responded. I said, that is for black on black, my friend. This is basket weave, or not basket weave, the wicker, and it's
right.
Wicker with black Tolex and white piping. That's a custom option. This is a $680 cabinet new. Like, yep. No offense, dude, but you don't know what you're talking about. So then he comes back and says, well, it says here you've got a 30-watt speaker in it. I have a vintage 30 in it. Anybody who knows anything knows that's a 75-watt power handling speaker. Yep. I like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Then he said, then he turns around and he says, well, if you take the speaker out, I'll buy it from you for $420 plus the $115 you want for shipping. And I'm going, oh my God. All right. So here's the rub, right? Like in any other cabinet, in literally any other cabinet, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's do it. Because that means I'm going to get new price for the combo.
Right.
But in this cabinet, it's going to be a pain in the ass. And it's going to be a problem because I literally will have to. So if you've ever taken apart, have you ever taken apart a closed back Mesa cab, Jim? All right.
No. And I don't want to.
So the back panel on those guys, they mount them in, and I swear they use a mallet to actually get the Tolex to fit flat, and then they screw them together. I did
take one apart.
You can literally take the screws out, and that back is not going to come off. There's no way. It's like sealed on there. You have to, and then so in order to get it off, you have to pry with some sort of tool to get underneath the edge, and try not to damage the Tolex while you do this, because then it's no longer going to be extremely good condition.
Right, or use the suction cup thing that you use for like a car.
Yeah, so the other option was, and even that can damage the Tolex, Jim. So you got to be careful because the Tolex is soft.
I know.
But my thought was actually like you can remove the center where the jacks actually sit, and then go inside and lift up. But I tried that the last time I had to take one apart, and it didn't work out so hot. I ended up actually using. I think I used like a plastic like iPhone screen removal type tool to like get underneath the Tolex and pry it up. And I had to do it on like multiple places to get it to loosen up enough that I could actually. It was a long process. It took 2 hours.
Remember, I took that because there was a speaker. We wanted to know if it was a specific speaker in one of those cabs I bought.
Yeah.
So I had to open that thing, and I had a similar experience, and it was nightmarish at best, because if it wasn't right, I was returning it, which I did.
Right.
And I had to do that all without damaging it, or I couldn't return the damn thing.
Yeah, I mean, it literally takes, if you don't know what you're doing and you're really concerned about like damaging the Tolex or putting any marks in it or anything, it can take 2 hours. It took me 2 hours to get to the, and that was in my big boy recto, where I replaced the V30 with a new one because the other one blew.
And I was doing a 1x12.
Yeah, it was a single 1x12, right? In my case, it was a single 1x12 as well. But it's just one of those things where somebody thinks like, oh, well, that's going to save you a ton of money and hassle. I'm like, dude, look, I know I'm going to get $550 for this cab. I just have to wait. So unfortunately, dude, I'm going to have to tell you to go pound sand, because this is just not going to work out. Like, and not only that, but like total inconvenience. Just, the way that people talk to you on Reverb sometimes is just like,
People get so mad because you're not meeting their expectation of what you want to sell your gear for.
It's not listed as separate items, dude. Go away.
No, it's mind-boggling.
I don't have to do that if I don't want to.
It's like when what's his face listed his pedal jokingly, but listed his pedal for $1 million. The Klon, was it JHS or something? Or $500,000, and then they did a joke thing where Music Is Win bought it, and Josh Scott was out partying, and it was pretty fun. It's a funny little skit if anybody hasn't seen it. It's a cute little skit. It's funny.
A long time ago, to share a story similar to this, long time ago, I had a guy reach out to me, and he said, your shipping on an item is high. Okay, so I responded, and I said, my shipping is what it is because I have to buy a box, and I can't remember what the item was for. I have to buy a box. I have to buy packing material. If you're not familiar with what packing material costs, it must have been a guitar and amp because it was a lot of packing material I was going to need. And if you haven't done this, like shipping a guitar insured of a value over $1,000 will cost you over $100 now. Like that is, unfortunately, that is the cost.
Well over.
Yeah, that's just insurance and all that.
$60.
Yeah, I mean,
not that long ago.
Well, it's the insurance cost, and it's the fact that things have gone up as a result of the pandemic. Like they've just been, they've skyrocketed.
It used to be $1 per 100, so $1,000 was $10.
Yeah, no,
but that is not the case anymore. Believe me, it is not the case anymore.
No,
and if you haven't shipped. I paid, it was $80 to ship pedals.
Mm-hmm. I believe it.
The bigger pedals I sold recently.
Yeah.
Those were like $80 to ship. And that was for the full, and I didn't have to buy materials. That was just to put them in a box.
$80 for the whole group. So about 15 to $20 a piece. That's what I figured.
Right. Yeah.
So I get back to this guy. I said, look, I want to make the sale here. This is what we can do. Why don't you pay the shipping as it is right now? I will refund you the difference if it is if the amount you pay me exceeds what it costs. I will send you pictures of the receipts. And once I make that statement via chat, like Reverb then knows, and they can hold me to it. So that's actually sort of what happens, right? So I sent the guy all the receipts and basically show him I actually ate $5.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, I didn't realize shipping things was that expensive.
When I sold my V, I ate 30. I want to say it was 30. I figured 75. I might have charged 80 for shipping. And I ate still $30 or $35.
I believe it.
So I packed that thing. I double boxed it. I packed the guitar in its case, still put packing in it, still put stuff under the strings.
I do the same.
Then I packed the case in a box. Then I packed the box in a box. Then I wrapped. Then I weighed. Then I shipped. And I did that all using Reverb. It was really an extremely easy experience. Because you can go to, those who don't know, you can go to your local guitar store, and most of your guitar stores are going to give you boxes because they're throwing them out. Yeah.
Especially if you're good friends with them. That's where I get most of mine now. But I still end up buying packing material from time to time.
Yeah, but you still have
a roll of bubble wrap. If I'm shipping a guitar, I can use an entire roll of bubble wrap. So keep that in mind. And it's $20 or $30 a roll now. So it's like, guys,
it's $3.50 for tape.
Not to mention my labor involved. You don't know how much I got to run to the store to get this crap and come back and and that's the other one is that when it's the next day. When's it going to ship?
And has anybody stood in line? Right. Has anybody stood in line recently to ship stuff?
Yeah. That's a whole other.
Even just to drop it off, you're standing there in line. And they're like, you're trying to get it.
That's a whole other. This is a whole other thing. All right, so we didn't do a little recap of what we're going to talk about in this episode, but I think
I do have a what's new.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
One what's new. Number one, this is funny. So I bought these I bought a 5-pack of Fast Fret from Guitar Center because they had a special going on. You bought 5 and you paid for 4. So it was $20. I was like, wow, $20 for a thing of Fast Fret? Hell yeah. I'll buy a 5-pack. This is what number 5 looked like.
Oh my gosh.
So I contacted my Guitar Center rep. Everybody knows who my Guitar Center rep. If you don't know, watch past episodes. And I said, this is missing. And I sent him a picture. And he goes to me, Jim, got you covered. He put that I returned it. And he sent me out a new thing. And I was like, I figured he was going to send me one.
No, you got a second 5. Right.
So now I have 9 frets, which I can't say enough good as far as that goes. That was a good experience for Guitar Center.
Yeah.
I also ordered the expression pedal, the Mission expression pedal for my Kemper.
Wait, did you get the spring loaded one or did you get the regular one?
It was $150, so I don't know. Is that the spring loaded one or is that the regular
I don't know either. That's why I'm like, because I think they're the same price or very close.
Are they?
Yeah.
It's the EP1.
Yeah, I think
EP1,
that's the normal one. I think that's the normal one. You'll be fine either way. So for what you're wanting to do with it, I think you'll be fine on either way.
Yeah, it's going to be wah unless I toe the thing down, or I mean volume unless I toe it down to wah, and then it'll all the way back cocked will be tuner in the volume thing, which I cannot say enough good about the Kemper. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
So far, it's been a great experience. I'm sure I'm going to run into that sound guy or that sound girl.
I was telling Jim before the show. I was telling Jim before the show. He's like, "Oh, this has been so cool. Like, I don't have to carry all this crap and whatever." And I'm like, "Dude, it's really great." And I'm like, I remember what my experiences like were when I first got it and like started playing out and stuff. But I'm like, then you get into the situation where the sound guy sucks, or like you come into a place where the PA is not adequate. Like there's no monitor for you, you're like, oh shit. And I've had that happen too many times around here for me to really like continue doing that full time.
I took it. Oh, I didn't mention. So I took it to. I wanted to test that. So I took it to my open mic that I go to sometimes on Thursdays. I haven't been in months. I mean, like probably close to a year. And so I went to the open mic. I set up the Kemper, and they were like, "What are you going to take off? You know, all the Star Trek jokes. You know, or you're going to fly a starship and everything, whatever." I plug it in, XLR, power, got my cable to my guitar, start playing, and he was like, "Holy crap!" Everybody commented on how good the tone was. And what's funny is, I didn't have a monitor. I was hearing it through the mains. It was great.
The mains, but were the mains behind you?
Yeah, I was lucky enough that they were
like close enough that you could get part of the
enough.
Yeah.
I was getting the side lobe of what I was getting. But everybody out front said it sounded great.
There's one place that I used to go, and they had an open mic, and they had very directional mains. No monitor. And the nights where the host would bring his monitor, he would bring like 3 of them, and he'd like try to mix you while you were playing. And it was like, oh my God, dude, just like crank the guitar through the monitors. I got to be able to hear it. And then if you're playing with backing tracks, it makes it worse, which I was doing at the time. And I was like, oh my God, like, can we like do something about this? Like,
yeah, I got to learn how, because I know you can run backing tracks through the Kemper and run them right out.
Yeah, there's a way to do it. I forget exactly how you do it, but I figured that out too.
It's post,
But I started doing
this. That's what a lot of people are doing for acoustic.
I actually preferred to have it mixed separately, because then I could have them. If you had stereo monitors, you could have them pan it, which was nice.
Right.
But the other thing was I could have them balance it, and I don't have to worry about messing it up on stage and stuff. So I got to the point where I was like, I'll just run this separate. It's okay. So anyway, I'm going to just do a brief recap of all the other stuff we're going to talk about in this episode. We're going to talk about, and I know there are titles over on this side of me. They don't necessarily reflect what we're actually going to talk about. I'll kind of go over a little bit. So we're going to talk about the unlabeled line in the sand. I actually have to correct one of these as I'm looking at it. I'm glad I have a backup sheet. We have, we're going to talk about unlabeled guitars. Okay. We're going to talk about the line in the sand. So let me fix these while I'm talking about this. It's good that I can do this while we're live.
That's right. That's right. It makes post so much easier.
Unlabeled guitars. There we go. All right, cool. Fixed. We're going to talk about unlabeled guitars. We're going to talk about the line in the sand that we draw in terms of what we're willing to do for value. What are we willing to sacrifice to save a couple bucks?
Right.
And probably maybe a better approach to this question is like, what have we sacrificed recently to save a couple bucks?
Exactly.
It's, except for your Les Paul Custom, because you didn't sacrifice anything to save a couple bucks on that, really.
I did not sacrifice a couple dollars on that.
It was quite a few dollars on that.
It definitely didn't come cheap.
Yeah. So, and then we're also going to talk about Doug Pinnick's interview on Phil McKnight, which I haven't seen yet, but Jim's going to talk about. I have seen Doug live, so That'll be an interesting conversation. And of course, we'll close out the gig report as per the usual lately. So with that being said, we can now move on to segment 2, which is unlabeled guitars. So what I just want to define what unlabeled guitars actually are. Non-major label guitars from brands that you haven't heard of before. So like brands like Ibanez and Schecter and G&L and all these like third tier brands that are kind of below Fender, Gibson, PRS and that kind of stuff. They don't count for this. Okay. When we're talking about unlabeled guitars, we're talking about guitars like Shengzai, things you've never heard of that probably come from China or somewhere else in the Far East, or even maybe South America or something like that, that don't really have any pedigree. And we're going to talk specifically, I think, mostly tonight about China, because that's been the hotbed of most of this stuff. And of course, we've been pretty hot and heavy on China guitars for a while, but I want to. Right. I think it's important for us to revisit this topic every once in a while, because obviously the situation over there changes in terms of what kind of instruments are coming out, and what that quality level is starting to look like. And a lot more major manufacturers are starting to move towards Chinese production. It's something that's going to happen. But in terms of the unlabeled guitars, these are. We watched the same thing happen in Japan, right, in the late 70s. Where Tokai and all these other companies sort of were at the bad end of quality in the late 60s, early 60s, and then sort of like went down this path of improving, and then ultimately became, a marketable commodity, and did really well. And so like, I think we're still in the 60s for Chinese guitars. And I think especially the non-labeled stuff. So like Tokai is not Squire Japan. Okay. That way, you know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of where I'm getting at with this unlabeled thing. So we'll probably actually stick to using this term on the show in the future, unlabeled guitars. But anyway, so I was watching a video from Phil McKnight, and it's an old video. I think it was from like last year, where he got a Les Paul custom alike from Firefly Guitars, which is an Amazon resold brand. But basically, it's like any other Chinese guitar, except it has the Firefly logo on it. In how it's constructed, right? So, we know from the Shengzai I bought, and from conversations we've had with other people who've bought Chinese guitars, in general, they're all basically Epiphones in their construction. Some of them might get some things more right towards Gibson spec or whatever, and if it's a Gibson, a Chinese Gibson knockoff. And it was interesting because like I knew what I was going to get in this video. I've seen enough videos on Fireflies to sort of like know where we were headed. Usually microphonic pickups. The fretwork is usually decent, but not great. And then like they have a bone nut, that kind of thing. Sometimes the tuners are janky, like really bad, like, chrome plated plastic stuff, chrome paint that they put on plastic or whatever it is. Which was on my Shengzai when I took it apart. And then usually the bridge and stuff's not great, but they're serviceable, I guess. I mean, unless you get one with a warped neck. But what was interesting was in this particular video, he took the pickups out, and then he started pointing out that you couldn't see a difference between the top and the body, which meant that there were no separate wood, which is obvious. But that wasn't what got me. Like, it's a custom. You're not going to get, I imagine in an import custom, you're not going to get separate top and body woods. What got me was that it wasn't even mahogany. It was like not even a mahogany look-alike. It was like, here's this cheap guitar with like poplar, or it wasn't even basswood, because basswood is consistent. Like the grain is consistent. It actually looked like maple or something. And it's probably some indigenous species to wherever they made the guitar that they call maple. Because that's a lot of what happens in the lower end guitars in the market is they use one word, but what they really mean is like, well, our local version of. Right. But I just sat there and I thought about it, and I went, wait a minute, I remember these guitars being advertised as mahogany bodies. And that's clearly not mahogany. No. And so I mentioned it to you because I was messaging on Facebook, and then you said, well, you should watch this other channel and their teardown of their pickups. You wanna take over and
Yeah, so this guy Jim Dar, and with 2 R's. So he took one of the pickups apart. He didn't just take it apart. He literally cut it in half. So what he did was, because he said, Jesus is microphonic. And he said, later in the video, you'll find out why it's microphonic. And it's actually a 2-part thing where he takes this Firefly ES335, by the way, apart. And he's like, I can't figure out why this is microphonic. He goes, the wire is enough. It's scattered around. It's scattered around right. He goes, maybe it's not as good of copper. So he literally cut first he thought it was, like I said, not wax potted. It was obviously waxed. He cut the wire and he pulled, you could see where he frayed the wire open. And he was like, maybe it's the metal isn't good enough. Then he took out the slugs and the magnet. So here's what he found. One, the magnet if you just looked at it, you'd say, well, it's a good magnet. It wasn't a great magnet. It wasn't a good magnet at all. And then worse, the slugs, these are the pole pieces, by the way, guys, if you don't know what those are. So he took out the slugs. They were berry metal. So they were made of this stuff that was a super light material that had metal in it.
Chrome-plated plastic.
Yeah, it was effectively a chrome-plated plastic feeling stuff. And so what he did was he found that's what literally the problem was. You can wax pot something that's a piece of shit, and it's just going to be a wax potted piece of shit. So the fact is that wax potting is not the panacea we all want to think it is. Oh, if I wax pot this. What does wax potting do? I'm asking you because I know, but what does wax potting do?
Keeps the wires from vibrating, moving.
That's right. Keeps it from vibrating. The whole feedback thing, right? The whole feedback loop. Keeps the wires from vibrating. Because, and Ryan pointed this out. I thought this was good, actually, in Ryan's recent Firefly 360 cycle hum. He goes, this is the kind of feedback you don't want. This is the pickup feeding back. And then he goes, there's the string feeding back. Notice the difference. And it's very audible. Really good job Ryan did there. And so what's happening is the pickup itself is feeding back. Well, if you wax pot this thing, you're not keeping this thing that you put in there that no matter how much wax you put on it, is still going to vibrate internally because it's barely made of metal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
What he was probably getting from the microphonics is probably the actual the lightweight slugs just bouncing against the magnet, which would explain why everybody says those pickups are microphonic, except for the one guy that popped up in somebody's video in the comments was like, "My pickups are the best pickups I own," and I'm like,
I think it was Ryan.
What?
Somebody got him, and he says he was mad because they weren't microphonic. It's like, I thought you said they were microphonic.
Well, maybe you should go try them again because they probably are microphonic.
You know what I liked? Another thing I liked about his video before we keep going about the microphonic, actually, that was cool. And I liked the microphonic pickup because of this. He put it up to his face. He turned the amp
and spoke through it.
And he spoke through it. I was like, that's the sound you hear. Like in a lot of these intros where somebody's singing through something that doesn't sound quite right. It's a microphonic pickup is what they're singing. That's what it felt like to me. I was like,
fly buzzing around me if you're wondering why I'm reaching for the air.
I just had a gnat over here. That's why I was looking down here.
We're both doing the same thing. It's like you're giving me the gnats to your display or something. I don't know.
And so, yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway, so Jim Dar took the guitar. Now, he literally took the guitar completely apart. This guy he's if you watch the channel, by the way, I do recommend it, but he's very dull. Like he talks like this the whole time. He does not change the way his pitch moves. So you got to be ready for that. He's very, Bueller in his delivery. That said, the guy does do a good job of taking things apart. And I've been watching the Guitarista as well. And each of them are doing kind of the same thing in that they're taking these things apart and taking these budget guitars, tearing them apart, comparing them. But what he's not doing is he's not lying about it, saying it's as good as this. He's saying, for this much money, I can do these things. But here's the thing that I noticed, and there's a lot of these guitar guys, and even Ryan recently said this, although Ryan's was a little bit closer to the truth, is, hey, you can always put money into this, make it better. And we talk about that a lot. We're going to get to that with our line in the sand. So it's like, yeah, but you have a guitar pickup winder. You have, I mean, not everybody has a crock pot they want to throw beeswax into or whatever,
Right.
Not beeswax. It's, what kind of wax?
Whatever kind of hot pot that you would use for
paraffin.
that. Paraffin.
That's what I was thinking. And you just need a little crock pot. You could get the smallest crock pot you want, heat it up, and but who wants to cook food in it now? I don't know. Is that easy?
Having done this, I can tell you it's actually not as easy as just throwing it in there. But there's a bit of science to it. But I mean, the vast majority of us don't have the means to create our own pickups at home. Not that you couldn't. I know of a man who has done just that. And
you can buy kits on Amazon. I mean, you can buy a kit to if that's something you want to get into. And I don't think that's a bad idea for people that want to get into it. Go for it.
Sure. All right. So here's how I kind of want to frame this as I'm thinking about this conversation and thinking about Firefly specifically. So we've talked about, of course, in recent months, and I'm sure people are going to be listening to this and going, you guys have just done this story to death. Like, we have. And it's because it's a big issue in the community right now. I mean, if you don't believe me, I watched a video of Nick in the States, who does a lot of Chinese guitar reviews, or did anyway. He's slowed down significantly. I think he's got health issues or something. But anyway, I was watching a video where he was talking about a return to YouTube, and like he was saying basically that the reason why he still focuses on inexpensive guitar reviews is because that's what's given him like the most views. When he buys Gibsons, he's like, I get maybe 800 views. He's like, if I buy a Harley Benton, he's like, I get like 10,000 views.
Yeah.
So he's like, what am I going to do? Am I going to buy Gibsons or am I going to buy Harley Bentons? It's a no-brainer. The Harley Benton's a hell of a lot cheaper. You can buy 20 of them for the price of a Gibson. So I think that's something that like it's interesting to note in this is like, if you're going to ask us why we continue to beat this dead horse, it's because I still get questions from people all the time. If I go to an open mic or whatever and I'm talking to somebody, like, have you ever tried a Harley Benton? It's like, yeah. You've got a Fender Strat there right now. Why are you looking at Harley Benton? Like, it's like, and I feel like that when we do this on the show too, we're supposed to be practical guitarists. And we've said that practical meant, practicing musicians, but it also means that like just being practical and stop and think about that for a minute. Does it make sense for somebody who is a practicing musician, i.e. somebody who gigs and or records and actually does like make some sort of money off of their music, which I'm still struggling to do that, make some sort of money off their music? Do they really want to buy a tool that they can't rely on, or that is not adequate for producing the musical vision that is giving them finances? I can say this: I've never seen a gigging player around here, and I actually can say I've never actually seen a gigging guitarist on YouTube and in a performance, either in the studio or live, playing a Harley Benton or less. Okay. Yep. I've seen Squire. I've actually seen Squire. I have never seen someone playing a Harley Benton on stage and, in any capacity other than,
I want to tell one Squire actual story that I saw. So for one of the bands, we do the song Stars by Grace Potter and the Nocturnals.
Right.
And she has a live thing where she's doing it on one of those Apple Live things or whatever. She's performing live, and the bass player, think is left-handed. He's playing a Squire bass, left-handed Squire bass. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And He's doing this live for someone that makes a few more dollars than most of us do when she's gigging. I bet she made more money on that gig than a lot of us make in a year. And so I'm joking mostly, but I want to bet she made a few $1,000s to sit there and sing 3 songs.
Sure.
At this thing. And the point is, and there was a bass player with a Squire. I thought it was great.
Which listen, I'm not saying you shouldn't play Harley Benton.
No.
I'm saying you should just do what you need to do to be practical. And that's why the next segment is the line in the sand. What are we willing to sacrifice? Because we do have to sacrifice things for value at times. Listen, if I could buy the crap I wanted to play, I'd have a couple of PRS Cooler models. I'd have, probably one of each of the Mesa Boogie lineup, maybe except the California, because it's not my favorite one that they are doing right now. But but I don't have unlimited funds. And
I'd have an R7, I'd have an R8, I'd have an R9, I'd have a 355.
Yeah.
So this one was cheap compared to an R8 or an R9. So I'm just saying that
anyway,
there are lines
with regards to the line, where the low end of the market is willing to go in terms of convincing people that they're higher quality. That's what scares me the most. And that's something you actually touched on this morning in our conversation, which is that they are now getting to the point where they will color a wire so that it looks more like Formvar, so that you can't tell what it is. And that kind of stuff, or even using plastic slugs instead of, real slugs, or, some sort of, air impregnated iron so that they can get, I think my Apple TV just started on its own. I believe I can kill it from my phone. So let me do that while we're take over for a second.
I mean, the slugs were like a pop metal instead of real metal. And what I want to get at is I saw a while we're talking about this, and before we go to the line in the sand, this is what I want to say. So I was watching a channel, because I watch a lot of technology channels, and I was watching a channel where this guy was talking about Amazon creating products that were alikes to other products, and Amazon finding out, hey, this is a high seller, let's make something that looks like it. From everything from dishes to soap to whatever, right? If it was popular, Amazon came out with an Amazon Basics version of it. So here's my point, and this takes us out of the guitar world. Let's come out of the guitar world for just a minute. And you did a great thing with the Japanese stuff. I can tell you this: in the '60s and the early '70s, people made fun of the Japanese products. Okay, we're talking about cars, we're talking about anything. Everything came from Japan was garbage, but it looked like the other stuff, and this is what I was getting at. It looked like the other stuff. So then Japan figured out, wait a minute, we can do this for less money. We could do it for, and less money meant more efficiency. And I want to get to the 80s at this point. So Japan went from being a Toyota Corolla, from being a piece of garbage, to actually being a really nice car. Okay. And Honda to being one of the best cars that you can buy. Keeping its value, right? We all know that. All right. So there was a movie in the 80s where Michael Keaton he plays this guy.
Gung Ho.
Gung Ho. Thank you, Gung Ho. So Michael Keaton is playing this guy that's in charge of.
It's basically the Toyota. It's the Toyota story,
right? It's the Toyota story. They come over and Americans. This is the thing that I think hasn't happened yet in the guitar industry. That has to happen. Is Americans fought the fight that said, we have to do it the American way, and the Japanese guys came in to train them. And you remember, it was a funny movie. If you haven't watched it yet,
it's a good comedy.
Watch it. It's a good movie, but it has a very good point, and that is that the Americans had to stop and take their pride and throw it out the window, and learn that there were more efficiencies that could be done, and they could do things better with and higher quality if they just see past their own inefficiencies and their own,
It's about pride.
ego.
Yeah, it
ego,
was about pride and,
Thank you.
and ego there. I mean, that was like, and we're definitely dealing with that here in the States right now. I mean, how many of us are
We
still talking about like when you buy a guitar? Oh, was this? Did they use pin router and templates? I've seen that conversation come up. Why would you want pin routers used on your stuff? Like, I'm just flabbergasted. Think about what that actually means. All right, that means that you're going to get a guitar that is different than every other guitar in that line, but it also means that you're going to have a lot more crap in that line too. So why would you want to make guitars with pin routers? Like, I'm just not, I don't follow that logic. And amplifiers is a little bit different because I've been looking at deluxe reverbs lately and like, I'm not buying one. Fully admitting I'm not buying one. But I was thinking about it and I'm like, wait a minute, but they aren't different, or they are different than the originals. And like, this whole idea that like there are actual physical differences. Whereas when you're buying a Strat, I mean, a Strat's a Strat to an extent, and there are little differences, but it's not like in an amplifier where they've changed the output stage or something like that, and it basically changes the entire tonality of it. So in terms of a comparison between what we do in the States versus what they do over there, like, I don't think there's a whole lot of comparison for efficiency because we buy inefficiency here. People are like, no, I want it to be inefficient. I want
literally
a pin routed guitar. I want a guitar that was shaped by hand. I want, like being shaped by hand means that there's more attention to detail, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand the logic there.
And that goes back to what that story about you want a Wednesday guitar, or you want a Tuesday through Thursday guitar because Monday was a boring day, or they just came back with a hangover or whatever, and Friday they're worried about getting out the door. Remember? And so we get to. I'm gonna be honest. Okay, I got 6 guitars hanging behind me right now. Every 7 that say Gibson on the headstock. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Okay. I love every one of them, but I also know they're not perfect. And to some people, not worth the money I paid for them, much less the money that they charge for them, because I got a discount on every one of them. All right. And the fact is that I see all those things and I understand them. And we're getting, are we in the line of the sand yet?
No, not yet. We're heading there though.
Not yet. I'll talk about that when I get to the line of the sand, because of what I expected and what I was willing to draw in the sand. And there's so many things I think that's what we have when it comes to that. Now, that's all that said, I also appreciate the fact that PRS is like exacting. I mean, there's guys are, exacting.
I mean, they're CNCing everything they can that makes sense.
That's right.
Now, I even think that like so I have worked in places that are related to the aerospace industry, and I know what's possible with CNC. And like when I hear, Paul say, well, we still hand shape the necks because that's really the only way to do it, I kind of laugh because I'm like, that's not why you hand shape the necks. There's another reason for it that you don't want to disclose, because you can use a CNC machine to do more than rough shape a neck. You can get it basically to come out the same way every single time you make a guitar. You can.
Let's face it. The Fireflies, to make a semi-hollow guitar, a 335 copy, for under $200, that thing is made by a machine from almost exclusively.
I would say there'd be less than 2 hours worth of hand labor in that.
Yeah. And that might be putting in the electronics. I mean, have you ever tried to route the electronics to one of those things? That might be putting in the electronics and the hardware and getting it out the door.
Yeah.
And there's no way a person is sitting there and setting it up. That's being done by a machine too, which I don't have. Look, that's not me saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that that's probably a reality, is that like you said, there's probably 2 hours of putting that thing together. That's got to do with a
hand work. I mean, like, I would think that everything is CNC up until the electronics install at the end, to be honest with you, because that is something that has to be done by hand. But the like, even the paint doesn't even even the binding. Like, that was another thing. Right. So Trogley did that video where they were looking at the Centipede Les Paul with the broken headstock, and it had yellow binding, and he's going, well, they painted this binding. They painted this binding. I don't think they did. I think that binding was yellow when they put it on, and I honestly think that whole series was red, green, yellow binding that they were installing themselves, because if they were doing that by hand painting, so it would be an issue with the black layer and the overspray, and they're not spray painting that binding, not masking it, and then I don't think so.
They could be dyeing white binding.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking was like, maybe it's dye. Yeah. And then
there's no effing way they painted that binding. There's no effing way. I bet you if he took a piece of that binding, pulled it off, cut it, he'd find the white inside, the cream filling.
Yeah. Well, that what you're saying, it will wear down to white, and I'm going, that's because you're wearing through the either the dye or the outer layer of the binding, but the inside plastic is always going to be white. Right. So because binding is not like a fancy material, it's plastic. No. People tend to think that it's like bone or something. It's like, no, it's not even Ivoroid. It's plastic.
It's soft plastic.
Yeah. And
the Les Paul binding is
back in the day, they used to use harder materials because it was supposed to protect the guitar, but now it's all ornamental. Whenever you see binding, it's totally ornamental.
Because there's a piece of my binding on my Les Paul, my number one, that got chipped somehow. I did something to it. I don't know. It's just a little spot. It's one I can see, and I'm like, drives me bananas because I can see it. Everybody's like, there's a chip in there. I said, yeah. Look.
All right, it's time for us to switch gears. We're going to talk about our line in the sand, and I think Jim's really excited about this topic because he keeps saying "line in the sand." And so basically, the genesis behind this was like, so like Chinese guitars aren't great. We know this, and we were just kind of like, what could you get away with and save some money on that you're willing to do? And actually, I kind of think it'd be more interesting to talk about things we actually have done to save money that have worked out for us, especially as, like having gigs. And I think the first one for you is probably the Kemper. Yeah.
I mean, I was telling you today, on my way to church, I had for the first time ever, I fit everything in two hands. I had the Kemper and all the wires and everything that goes with that in one hand, and I had a guitar in the other hand, and that's all I needed. And that never happens with me, ever. And I was over the moon because everything sat in the passenger seat. I put the seatbelt around it, got in the driver's seat, and went. Then I got out, took it in, took it back out. It was such a breeze.
You buy an HX Stomp here. You're not talking me out of one.
I know. I'm not going to try to talk you out of one. I think it's a great idea. I mean, the line in the sand for me was how realistic. And I had this conversation as recently as last week with local musicians. How realistic do I need my tone on stage? And we went back and forth like you wouldn't believe. And the one person that I thought would be against me was actually for me. He said, man, I need to get one of those. And he was like, but he watches Rhett Shull. And
Rhett didn't like the stage, which is so funny because he actually uses them.
Yeah, it's funny. But he has a Line 6 Helix, and I said to he's my co-guitarist in the band, and he says, I'm thinking about getting the Line 6. I said, dude, would get whatever one you want. If you like Rhett's tones, fine. I said, but I can tell you this, I could never get Rhett's tones out of what I was playing. And we play Les Pauls, and he plays some freaking hipster guitar that you've never heard of.
Single coils or P90s, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying that if you're going to take your Squire, sure, you might get sound out of it. But I don't know if you're going to get the tones you want with your Les Paul. I'm not saying you won't, but you can contact Rhett. You can reach out to him. I said he's not a guy that's like a superstar. Believe me, you can reach out to the guy and ask him, say, hey, I want to buy your bundle. I've got Les Pauls. What should I get? I said the thing that I did was I got that. I did buy Rhett's bundles. I probably could just give them to him. I don't know. And because I'm not using them. So anyway, I bought the Tone Junkies bundle. I bought every bundle every time I've gotten one of these damn things. The TC Electric or the TC Helicon. I have those bundles.
He buys all the presets.
I buy all these presets. I load them up. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's a breeze. Just throw these presets on. You're all set."
Jim, you bought the Tone Junkie presets before before the Kemper even showed up.
I did.
That's why I was like, dude, I honestly, we were having that conversation. I was like, why did you buy these? Like, you haven't even tried it out yet. Like,
I know.
Slow down, boy.
I loaded, 10 of them? 5 of the King of Tone included, 4 of them were King of Tone 1968 Plexi.
Right.
One,
the purple Plexi.
The purple Plexi one is a purple Plexi clean.
That purple Plexi, man.
4 with the King of Tone, all at different gain stages, and I'll explain why.
Yeah, because
another time, because each gain stage, it's different. It's very important that you get each one instead of just putting one gain stage.
So the Kemper, so the Kemper gain knob only really works for. You can, and I have gotten usable tones out of it in its extremes, right. But if you stay within like 10 or 15% of the profile's slated gain thing, it's way more realistic. It's way more realistic.
Yeah, way more realistic. And it's really more like I use it for like I've got the Strat or I've got the Les Paul.
Right.
So I give a little more gain to the Strat, a little less to the Les Paul.
Right. Because you'd have different settings when you plug those guitars in anyway. So
yeah. And it's really minor. I mean, so minor. So anyway, point is I bought all of Tone Junkies things and I said, okay, load up what you think is going to work. The ones you think he recommends for you, and then put those on there. And then if you like it, great. If you don't like it, return it and get a Kemper. I'm just saying. I said, and then if you don't, I said, as a matter of fact, borrow my Kemper, try it, see what you think, and then if you like it, just get one. And so anyway, we were talking about that, and the fact is that. When I got this, I took the Tone Junkie HW, which I'd love to get back on the show now that I've had.
Yeah.
And loaded it up, and boom! I'd love to get him and Michael Britt together on there. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where it was just out of the box. It was just so easy. So my line in the sand though is, and this is the discussion I had with people. They were like, "Well, I can't do it because my." If I don't have my amp with me, it's not going to feel the same. It's not going to sound the same. And I said, and I get it. I get that. I really do. But and I said to them, I said, who's more important? You or the people out there? Because every time you walk, here's the thing. Here's the thing I said to him. I said, do this with your hand. I said, here's your voice. I said, do this. Right. And it makes a sound. I said, that's you walking in front of your amp. And you don't get it. You don't get it. Because you're like, well, I mic'd up my amp. True, you mic'd up your amp. But you also have the amp the sound of your amp in the room. I said, and you're not playing big places. And there are times, tell me there are not times where you go, this place is too small, I'm not going to mic up my amp.
Well, so that's a whole other ball of wax. The only place I won't mic up my amp, and I have gotten into like arguments with people about this, but the only place I will not mic up my amp is an open mic or an open jam. I have gotten to the point where it's like, guys, there is no way in hell you are going to get it. So my amp is not stepping on the vocalist because just the frequencies I use, you're going to have to mic it and you're going to have to pan it somewhere. You can't have it out front because you need that clarity. And especially, so like every bass player I've ever played with wants to go to the board. And if you're going to go to the board through, like with a direct out on your thing so that you can get the most out of the PA, then the guitar's got to be in there too. Okay.
That's right.
And so that you're talking about the phasing issues of walking around in front of your amp. You can fix that. I have an easy way to fix that. Put up Plexi. but that being said, you're still going to have an amp that has the volume is you're going to need a lot of wattage because you're going to be pushing a lot of volume to get past the plexi and to even things out. But you are partially right in saying this is really about the audience, and I'll tell you why you're wrong when you're ready.
But let me finish. So the guy's willing to use a katana, but not willing to use a Kemper, and that's where I was like, that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me.
Two things.
And so I'm going to get into the other thing because you're right. The phasing thing it's a minor issue, by the way.
It's super minor.
Yeah. Here's the
this is the reason that's hilarious. Money.
Yeah.
That's the reason that's hilarious.
Yeah. I'm going to go to the other side of it though. And that is that they're like, well, I can mic up. And I'm saying, you're right. You can mic up and you can always mic up. And there's no problem with miking up. People do it every day, all the time. It's about how well are you going to mic that up every time? So now what you're saying is you don't care about the tone in the front of the house. You care about your tone because that mic, even if you have an X on that thing, don't tell me that because he's talking about Joe Bonamassa. And I'm like, oh, about Joe Bonamassa.
Do you have a sound guy that follows you around from gig to gig?
Do you have an amp tech? Do you have a sound guy? Because I doubt very much you have that.
Oh, Jim, he uses a Palmer DI. That's the even better part, you idiot. Like,
I just had to laugh because of the fact that he doesn't. And finally, he admitted, I'm 68 years old. I'm not going to learn anything new. I was like, finally. That's your line in the sand. That's why I was talking about the line in the sand. Yeah. There's your line in the sand. You don't want to spend the money. And you don't want to learn anything new.
You know, and I hate to say it.
It's okay.
I hate to say it, but that's kind of a bullshit answer too, though.
Yeah, but stop making all those other things are excuses for I'm too old and stuck in my ways.
Right. That's what I was going to say. All right. So for those of you who have not played around with a katana, katanas are not the easiest amp in the world to get along with. They're easier than other digital amps. But you still have stacked delay reverb and stacked modulation effects. Yep. You have stacked drive effects. You have to know how to navigate those. If you want to use all of the stuff in the system, you still have to plug it into a computer. Like, you got to wrap your head around that. I think, do they have Bluetooth now on the Katana too?
No.
I didn't think so. No. I didn't think so. But my point is, somebody to sit there and say, well, this is obviously the solution for me because I don't want to learn anything new. And then they talk about a katana, which is a digital apparatus with software and all this other crap. It's like, it ain't really that much different, dude. And then on top of it, the real reason that it drove me crazy and I pulled out money from my wallet is because
my wallet's in the house.
This is what you need to think about. There's a guy with a 250 to at max $500 amp. The highest katana in the line is $500. Yeah. Saying that's not my solution is better than your solution. And it's like, dude, first off, this isn't a dick measuring contest. I've never walked in and gone, man, my amp is so much cooler than that guy's amp, unless his amp is underpowered. Okay.
Right.
That is an issue I've actually been kind of like sneering at people like, dude, you can't play a 20 watt solid state amp on a stage like this. And I have seen people try to do that. Recently, in fact. But there's a guy that I play with.
People try to use a Spark, so don't get me started.
Yeah, there's a guy I play with locally. He's got a katana, and it actually cuts mustard, and it's loud enough. We don't have the phasing issues. The place where we end up playing is usually, we're not micing amps. And it's fine. But it's because the way that space is set up, it's very reflective, and it's a big open stage, and it works out really well. You bring an amp with about 52 watts and you're good to go, between 30 and 50 watts and you're good to go. I've seen people put 15 watt amps on the stage and get 15 watt tube amps on the stage and just disappear. So you got to be real careful about your volume level there. But I mean, this basically, you can get away with it, right? Long story short, you can get away with it.
That's right.
So here's where I laugh at your line in the sand on this. It's like your comment to him was like, who are you playing for? Are you playing for the audience or are you playing for yourself? And everybody nobly wants to say I'm playing for the audience. But I will posit, I don't play for the audience so much as it's a 50-50 proposition. So when I go out and I play, if I am to stand on the stage and play well, and you want to get a good performance out of me, you're going to need to excite me a little bit. I got to have something that pushes me and inspires me to be the best guitarist I can be. And a lot of the situations I tend to play in are usually somewhat improvisational. And a lot of that's not just feel from the audience. I was playing to an audience this weekend that was basically, they were watching. They weren't like cheering and throwing their hands up or anything. So I'm kind of like, eh.
I still like that Tree song. That's a hook. That's a good hooky song.
Yeah,
that's an enjoyable song. They really should try to peddle that song to somebody because that's a fun song.
We're gonna get to the end of this. We're gonna get to the end of this. We'll talk about the gig report. But the main thing is that, like, at least if I'm having a good time, that translates to the audience, because that's you could see me, like, my eyes roll back in my head like a mentat from Dune, and I'm just rocking and rolling. Like, it's what happens. And that's what I'm trying to convey with that, is that, like, I'm not saying you're wrong, Jim, but I'm saying that, like, there's a big portion of that people forget about when they hear that. That's like,
exactly right. This is what I wanted. When we first started this channel, folks, one of the things that we talked about early on was that David and I play very different types of music, come from very different backgrounds. David plays improvisational, if I can get that out without spitting over my drink here, improvisational music that comes from his heart, right?
Yeah, it comes from my gut, for sure.
And when we first started this, you were playing very metal, black metal, or death metal.
I was playing a lot more progressive music. I wouldn't call it death metal or anything like that, but it was a lot more progressive than what I am now, which is more on the blues side of things, probably more oriented than. I basically just came to terms with who I am,
and doing it very well. I have no. And I can tell when I watched you on the recording, which we'll talk about later, you were having a lot of fun. I could tell that, even though I know there were probably some things, no gig is perfect, that
we're getting there.
But it was fun being had, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I can tell you right now, there's times I don't even hear myself. I'm just having a blast on stage. But so when I was brought into this band, and the reason that I work with this band, there's another guy over there doing all the heavy guitar lifting. I mean, he's doing all the heavy lifting.
So you're focusing on background vocals and filling things out.
I'm the guy doing all the chords when he's got to go to a solo. I'm the guy doing all the pads. I'm the guy doing all the high harmonies. I'm the guy that's literally running around. I'm the Angus Young to his Malcolm Young. I mean, but the difference is he's playing all of Angus's part and I'm playing Malcolm's parts. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm more the Keith Richards than anything. and so, and no one's going to sit there and go, well, Keith Richards sucks. I mean, yeah, Keith Richards kind of sucked in the beginning. He did kind of suck. I was watching a channel when they were talking about guitarists who weren't that great. Keith Richards is not great, but without Keith Richards, the Stones weren't the Stones, right? And so we've got to think about what kind of world we're going to leave for Keith Richards when we all die. But anyway, so the thing is that that's me, and sometimes I don't even hear myself. I'm just playing, and I'm playing from memory, and I'm playing. I know I'm playing in G. I'm supposed to be on G, playing a G chord somewhere, and so I know I'm on the neck, and I know what I'm doing, and I know that it goes from G to C to D to whatever. I know where I am, and in the song. And there's sometimes it's about the look on my face. It's about the way that I work with the lead singer who's standing there, who would be bare naked if it wasn't for me running around him. almost literally in a circle. And so, yes, my guitar tone is 100% about them because I don't care. I just don't care. I don't care. And that is my line in the sand. And so when people go to me, they go, Jim, I go, you know what? All I want to do is get a decent guitar tone. It doesn't sound like it sucks. That's why it amazed me, because I literally don't care. It amazed me that I couldn't get anything out of a freaking Helix that I didn't like. I was like, I don't care, and this still sucks. I mean, it's like, how does somebody who isn't so refined? I'm not that guy who goes, all right, I got to get this exact thing. Unless I'm doing a duet. Yeah, and you are. But we're going to talk about the differences there, and I want you to talk about them. Unless I'm sitting there with Joe and we're doing this guitar thing, like when we do Stairway to Freebird, when we do both songs back to back, then yeah, I have to make sure that I'm not stepping on him. He's not stepping on me. There's a lot of times during the gig, this is a big example of where I'm not padding. I'm actually filling a part. And then when he's doing the solo over, and then when we start doing this, when we're both playing G major pentatonic, and yet we got to sound like two guitars, not one. Otherwise, it sounds like a clanging mess, right?
Right.
So that's my point. That's my line in the sand.
All right.
Go ahead. Because I think it's important to what you do.
You had a really great anecdote. I was thrilled to share a lot there. So my whole thing, and I'm looking down at my feet because there's usually a pedal board below me. There is, but it's a looper and a beat buddy and my one spot. But pedal board is actually over to this side of me.
My Kemper's here, my looper's here.
I made we've been doing this show for a long time, and there was a time. This is how long we've been doing this show. There was a time period in the beginning where I was like spending way more money than Jim on gear, just left and right buying stuff, and it ended with the Kemper really. But there was like, I know that right after we started the show, I probably spent $1,000 on pedals. And then I sold everything, and I bought a Helix, and then I ran that for like 2 years, and I bought probably 4 or 5 guitars in that time period, and I don't own any of that stuff anymore. Okay. And they're feeding my felines.
That's cool.
This is cool. This is happening on the show right now, live, feeding the felines.
That's cool.
So
they got to eat.
Yeah, felines got to eat too. Anyway, long story short, I was buying all this stuff and I felt really bad about it because I'm like, I don't really like, I'm not even playing out at that time, and I was just kind of like trying to put something together. So, and then we tease you, Jim, all the time about buying, Les Pauls and stuff. You have definitely spent more money than me on this show. However, you're at a different place in your life. You're basically empty nesting. Like, yep. I am. You're in the same field as me, but you're 20 years my senior. So which means you're 20 years senior on the pay scale. And so there's like, that's a big part of this, right? Like, I don't think people really necessarily realize that you'll get to a point in your life where you're probably going to be making more money than you're making right now. And that's when you're going to be buying stuff. So anyway, long story short, I did have to make hard choices. Okay. And I did have to draw a line in the sand and start making some decisions about what worked for me. And I think the best anecdote I can share for people is if you remember, I had the Trio 43 pedal board. That might have predated the show. I might have had that before the show. But it was so big. It was so big. My arms stretched out this far.
That's right.
Could barely lift it. Okay.
And how many... Literally, let's talk about this. How much money was in pedals on that board? Take a guess.
$3,000
in today's money.
$3,000.
Today's money.
Probably $3,500.
Yeah,
I had an $800 switcher. I had Chase Bliss pedals, multiple Chase Bliss pedals. I had probably 8 or 9 other $100 to $200 pedals.
Did you have any Strifecta stuff?
No, I did not. But I did have the DD500, and I had 2 power supplies. I had, of course, the Trio board itself is not cheap. The Trio 43. I bought the bag for it, which is complete garbage. I would not recommend anyone buy anything from Temple Audio. If you want to know why, slide into my DMs, send me a DM private message on Facebook, and I will tell you why you should not buy Temple stuff, because Temple is not no. Anyway, yeah. So about $3,500, I would say, all told.
Yeah.
And I had, at the time I was running the Mark 525, and I had a big boy Recto cab, 1x12, and I was living the dream. I was all under the impression, well, you need to have 2 fuzz pedals. I gotta have a fuzz face style pedal, and I also have to have a big muff style pedal. I need to have.
But that kind of makes sense.
I need to have 3 different drives. But so it makes sense because I'm rationalizing it, right? I need to have 3 different drives. I need a distortion pedal, 3 drives, a distortion, and 2 fuzzes. Okay.
Now you're starting to step over
dirt pedals. Okay. I had delay. I had a DD500. For reverb, I was using a Digitech Supernatural, which I got new old stock. And then I had
that's nice.
I had a Gaiatone slow volume, which is a slow gear copy. I'm trying to think about the last incarnation of this board. Actually, one of my drives probably counts as 2 drives because I had the Brothers, which was
I was going to say you got the Brothers back, right?
No, I do not have the Brothers back.
Which one did you get back?
The Ethos Overdrive. So I had the Ethos Overdrive on that board too. I forgot. So I had the Ethos Overdrive, the Brothers.
That Ethos Overdrive costs like $600 something bucks.
I had the Ethos Overdrive, the Brothers, and like a different drive every month. I was just trying different drives out, and I just got to the point where at some point it just became dude, this is ridiculous. When I went to go put it in the back seat or the back of my Passat in the trunk and I couldn't get it in there, I was like, no, we can't keep doing this. So then I did the sensible thing, and I said, I got the ES8 switcher, I got MIDI, I can just program the Brothers to do a lot more stuff, and I can consolidate things down to a smaller footprint. So I had a pedal train, like the big boy pedal train, not the Terra, but the biggest one that people would sensibly use. I made a board out of wood, and I stained it and did all this fancy stuff to it. And that was the board I had when we started the show, and that was the board that I actually sold almost everything on it. To buy the Helix. to go in and get the Helix. Okay, so you can see this. I'm already starting to collapse things to get down to something that was more realistic. Yep. And it was because I kept just thinking to myself, I need to simplify. And now where I'm at today, this has evolved over the next 3 to 4 years, is I went pedal boardless. I went down to the point where I was using a Kemper and the switcher, right? And then that lasted about 2 years. And then I was like, okay, now that we got our head clear, I've had the Kemper. I know what the best digital available is. I really don't need all the Kemper has to offer me. I need to just go down to simplicity. And that's when I started buying stuff for the board back in 2020. So this is I can tell you the years that this stuff was going on. So these were all conscious thoughts in a very defined string of things. So in 2020, it made sense to me. I got, this guy was one of the final pedals I had to finish the board. This is the Walrus Audio Fathoms, which is a reverb. Yep. And I just had this idea that I was I need to go bare minimum. And so I had, I bought Voodoo Lab, one of their, I think it's the medium board. And I put, it was a modest board. I had 2 modulation pedals. I had a dual drive, and I had a fuzz pedal. And then I had reverb and delay. And I've been rocking that for almost a year. In that configuration, I have a wah as well. That's mounted on there, and a tuner. But now, I've been doing this open jam stuff, and I've been taking this tiny board, and it's literally got a Univibe. It has, so my 2 modulations are a phaser and a Univibe. This just has a Univibe on it. It has a BB preamp, a Golden Boy, which are both drives. And honestly, I could probably do it all with a BB preamp and a boost. And and it has a delay llama on it, and that's it. I'm playing that into a clean front end, and I've never been happier with the way things sound on stage, and like it's just really, really funny because I just keep slimming shit down. I'm getting to the point where it's like my sound is me with my hands playing the way that mostly playing the way that I do through a dual humbucker guitar or a guitar with like P90 like single coils into a clean front end with a couple of drive pedals and a delay and some sort of modulation. I cannot live without a Univibe. That's the one pedal. I think it's important
to point out the guitars you're using. So you're using a PRS S2. Right?
I have a PRS S2 35th anniversary.
Yeah, and you have a your other one is your S500.
Yeah, my G&L S500, which is a Strat with MFDs, which are kind of like they're like really, really muscular Strat pickups, so sort of like P90s. And I have the Godin LGP90, which I got to switch. I got to swap pickups in that. I've got the giveaway pickups. I've had them for months. My time has just been so gambly lately. I can't put aside 4 hours to do that on a weekend. Yeah. It's just not happened in such a long time that, I got news this week that, we lost all of our executive staff at work. They all quit.
Wow.
So, my time, I did 3 episodes in 3 weeks. I got 3 episodes out in 3 weeks, and hopefully, by the time this one airs, I'm hoping that I'll have 4 out in 4 weeks. But if people are wondering why, like my life, why I can't get episodes out, my life is chaos. It's just, I never know what I'm going to be doing the day I do something. It's just like, I got 4 hours, time to work on an episode. Like,
and there's, I work for the government. So there's about to be people starting to leave that didn't want to leave. So I don't want to get into why, but I just, that kind of thing is a reality and it is about to happen. And they're going to leave. And they're gonna walk away. But anyway, so I think that's important. I honestly think that's important. And I shouldn't. When I said I don't care about my tone, obviously if I didn't like the Helix, I do care about my tone. The fact is that I'm not paying probably as good of attention, maybe, as I should sometimes to where I know where I am in the mix. It's kind of, and that makes it easy, and that makes it easier to be the kind of a clown. You can call me the rodeo clown of the fucking band for all you.
I think it's easier for you also because the songs you play are pretty much preset material in a lot of ways.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. I know where I am. If I'm playing like 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, and 9 Jenny, right? I know my parts. Where I am during the chorus, verse, do I need to run over to my board and hit a pedal or not? To institute a drive or, whatever, a boost, those things are in there. And so sometimes I do have to stand at my pedal board. The silliest song, Love Song by 311. I have to stand there to play that song because I'm constantly going in and out of tones on that one with pedals. That's one of those ones I have to stand there for. Right? Yeah. But take me over to a song like, what is it? Not the Counting Crows, but the Black Crows, Hard to Handle. I can do the Black Crows Hard to Handle with one setting the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, and I just roll my volume knob for the solo and I roll it back for when I'm not.
And that's part of how my rig works now too, is it's like a lot of the shades of what I do are just using the controls that I already have available to me. And I'm getting a lot more comfortable with like, this isn't working in the song. I need to bend down and adjust things. And like, that's something I've always I think it's because I'm a little bit self-conscious about my weight and stuff. Like I really don't want to have to do that. But I'm just getting to the point where it's like, dude, no, this is about the music. Like I'm not even, if you don't like the way I look, go to hell. Like
my fat ass runs around that stage like you wouldn't believe.
right. So, that's a big part of it, but like a lot of, of course, like I look at guys like Jerry Garcia, who wasn't always the best looking dude on stage and just kind of like, whatever, nobody cared about him.
Charlie Daniels.
Yeah, another classic example. So it's not that big a deal. I just I think you have to, when you go down to those minimal rigs to get the change in tones, you have to be willing to get down and change things.
Yep.
And it's just part of it. Like, for the purposes of what I'm doing right now, though, simplifying has made me focus on the playing more and on the getting in and getting out of certain tones. So like before I would kind of work into and then hit the drive pedal on a solo. Whereas like now it's like, oh, I got a solo coming up, hit the drive as the solo starts. And I know that I have to do that. And I will actually sometimes just sort of intuitively roll the volume back before I hit the pedal on.
Right.
And that's been a big like life-changing experience, is like realizing that I only have 4 foot switches on the floor that I need to be hitting on a regular basis. And even just like using presets on my delay, like I was kind of an evangelist for the DM2 because I'm like, this is dirt simple. I don't have to do anything. But now I'm kind of like, no, but I want to be able to go to a long delay during this particular part. And so I'm sort of recanting a lot of the things I said, but on the same time, it's just trying to get more out of less.
Well, you would think. Now, here's the funny part about the Helix versus the Kemper. For me, now this is totally for me. Okay, I'm not talking about other people. I'm not talking about how other people have applied each of these devices. Okay, for me, what the Kemper has done is forced me to use four buttons. That's it. I have 5 performances, and I have 4 buttons to control the effects. So I'm kind of forced to choose those 4, and typically one's reverb delay, and I love the fact that you can use one to do both. Yeah,
I was just going to tell you a trick that I used to use.
I do love that. The morphing feature has been used many times so far, but I can go. I can put a boost. And so on and so forth. But the beauty of it is I could do that with the performances too. I can say, you know what, I'm going to have each performance is going to be like, this is the bridge and this is the everything
I was
else.
just going to say, the way I assigned my buttons was like chorus, verse, bridge, and then like outro or whatever, whatever other weird sound you need.
And I love this. I love the simplicity of it because it forces me to go, you have effectively one big pedal that you're pushing to make things happen. And you're not going to sit there and tweak these presets in here on stage.
Right.
And
which means you have to commit. And I think that's why a lot of people hate that kind of device, is because like, oh crap, I need more mids for this venue. Yeah. Better wait to the break because you got to go through menus. So anyway, that is what it is. I think we've talked about line in the sand. I think this might be a topic we touch back on.
Well,
later.
the guitar side of line in the sand is a big one.
Oh yeah, do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, I do.
What would you give up? What would I give up? Yeah, what would you be willing to give up for money?
Oh, all right. So I want a quality instrument, and yes, part of that quality instrument is good. Part of it is my ego. I'm gonna give you that. I'm gonna give everybody that. The headstock does mean something to me. But 2, and more importantly, because everybody will go, quality, you got a Gibson, blah blah blah. I know. You guys can yell at me all day long. Here's a funny thing. So I pulled the pickups out of my number 1, right? That's the amber guitar hanging right behind me.
Yep.
I pulled the pickups out of number 1. That has got some of the shittiest routing you've ever seen. The route, instead of being nice and clean, I can show pictures. It's got it looks like feathers in there in places. It's just terrible. The bridge, not so much as the neck. The neck, I don't know what happened with the router, but it's like the bit just went bad when it went around. So where the wires go in.
Right.
There's a nick in the where the neck, where the headstock goes up, where it hangs. Somebody hung it on before I bought it. Somebody hung on headstock, and it's got a little chip in it. It's got a ding in the binding I was talking about earlier. Of course, I play it, and I play it without the pick guard. So already my arm is starting to do what it's supposed to do. It's got buckle rash already, and I never wear a belt buckle out. I always wear my shirt over. Doesn't matter. Believe me, Nitro doesn't give a shit. It scratches anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you can't avoid it in Nitro.
Yeah, this print scratches the Nitro. So if you're gonna play a guitar, play the guitar. If you're gonna keep it in a case, keep it in a case. Point is this: the rough stuff, and you saw with my 335 where when I got it, there was buffing compound in that one spot that I had to get with a toothbrush. And of course, I have to be real careful because otherwise, you can use buffing. It's got buffing compound. Guess what it'll do?
It scraps the shit out of your finish.
That's crap out of the finish. So you kind of got to live with one or the other. So there's a little bit of buffing compound that's going to sit there forever. Looks like somebody was doing their toothpaste and was going to live. But anyway, so point is that I'm making here. And by the way, I haven't taken the pickups out of it yet, but that white Les Paul is just, it's head and shoulders. It really is cosmetically head and shoulders above a lot of guitars that I have. This is my thing. I want to be able to plug that guitar in and know it's going to work. I want to be able to plug that guitar in and know that when I roll that volume knob, it's going to do what I want that volume knob to do. That switch is going to switch every freaking time. And I know that eventually something will go wrong. But I want that mean time to failure to be huge. I don't want it to be when I'm being paid $8,000, okay, to play a wedding.
Right.
Now, I don't care about your $300 shitty gig at Bob's Pizzeria. And I don't really care about the fact that you're getting great tones on your YouTube channel. Not you personally. I'm talking about the yous.
Oh, no, don't worry. I'm getting plenty offended.
Yeah. The yous that are out there in the audience they're like, oh, Jim, you're an asshole. I get that. I really do. But when you when you play a wedding, you play in a tux 9 times out of 10, and you play a nice instrument that looks good, that sounds good, that's going to give the best performance. And those are my tuxedos. Okay? This one's my t-shirt and this is my tuxedo. It doesn't matter. The point is that it's the thing that you're doing for the betterment of, and for me, and that's me, and that's my line in the sand. Everybody's got a different one. I know you do. And my line in the sand is that thing looks, sounds, and feels right in the moment for me to play, to give the best that I can give for the kind of music that I play for people. And yes, it's all scripted. Almost everything I do is scripted. You do not know what I go through at rehearsals and go through in my head before I get on stage to make sure that it all looks so natural. People go, oh God, you're so natural when you get up there. And I go, I wish.
I'm a machine.
I really do wish. I'll go to, I'll just take it aside here. I was singing this weekend at karaoke. And somebody said, how do you make all these things sound so good? I said, because when I get up there, I'm acting. That's part of the show. It's part of the show. When I sing, whether it's Bridge Over Troubled Waters or Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, I get into the mind of what I'm trying to present in that moment. And I give that. That's the difference between a person that gets up there and goes, you my brown-eyed girl, you my brown-eyed girl. I mean, and you're staring at a screen and you're looking at it like this. And this is your presentation. Just like I was talking about with Jim Darr's channel. Kind of boring. Got some great points. It's just kind of dull. It's the same thing that I was talking about with that. I have got to present. I'm a short, fat guy who's in his mid-50s, who's not getting any younger, and for some reason not getting any thinner. So I need to be able to take all the good stuff I can do, you mix it up into a thing and you present it. You know, I'm not Guitar Max. I've got big muscles and I'm a pilot and, you know, I'm a good looking guy with jet black hair and I'm 30 years old and I'm shredding on guitar. No, I'm a short, fat, 5'6" guy who's up there doing his best to make a show. And that's what I do. So what's my line in the sand? My line in the sand is this. I've got to make those people go, yeah, I want to see this guy again. Bring him back. That's my line in the sand.
So, I'm going to stick to as close to the thematically accurate version of this question as I can, which is to talk about like value wise, what I'm willing to compromise on. Of course, anecdotally, I'm looking at my Seagull here next to me. Jeff Biaziadecki reached out to me from Good Time Today, said they got a the Maritime CH SWS Cutaway, which is actually what I wanted when I bought this guitar. And I was like, I entertained it for a minute. I was like, I could sell this one and I could go get the Cutaway. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sell this one. I like the way this one sounds. And so I made a compromise for playability over tone on that one. And price. I mean, this is $100 cheaper. So the PRS, like I compromised and I didn't buy a core model. I will probably eventually buy a core model. I'm not even gonna lie about that because I just decided that the aesthetics weren't all that important to me. The violin carve is not as important to me as I wanted it to be. I do definitely have some buyer's remorse. Like I think about it every once in a while. I'm like, someday somebody's going to come to me and go, oh, that's an S2. You know, I think in the back of my mind. Then I kind of like laugh about it. I go, dude, how many people do you run into where you're like, somebody's going to slander your S2 and you're going to be like, yeah, well, let me see how you play. Like, you know, let's see what you do with your core model.
I literally don't see that happening.
No, I don't think
I literally don't see that.
I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think most people look at S2s and go, that's out of the realm of affordability for most people. And it's like, it's not even about that.
I literally don't think most people, even PRS guys, I'll say this. I don't think that even most people, even PRS guys, would look at an S2 and go, oh, that's an S2. Most people would see it and go, wow, nice, a PRS. That's nice.
But I want to point out something. So like, it is a compromise for me. Because normally the way that I would do things is like, I want the best one I can afford. Like I'll go get and I probably can, as much as I hate to admit it, I probably can afford a core model. I just don't want to spend the money on it. Like it's one of those things like, I don't want to have to worry about it. I don't want to pay the insurance on it. I don't want to, there are various reasons why having a $3,000 or $4,000 guitar laying around is not really the most attractive thing in my life, especially when I'm trying to buy a house. So that's a whole other proposition because that's been the end goal for several years now. So, people think that like they see Mesa Boogie cabinets and stuff behind me and pedals on the wall. And I talk about these new pedals. Stuff. People think I don't compromise on things. And I do. I definitely I stop myself from spending money a lot. On stuff that I'm not really probably even going to use at a gig or like, wouldn't it be cool to have that? Like at some point, maybe it'd be nice to use it. I don't buy that stuff because it's like, I buy what I use. And
it crossed my mind to buy 2 of those mission pedals. And I said, nah, I'll just get one and I'll see if I can do that.
All right. So classic example. Like I was looking at pedals the other day and I was like, well, you know, I'd like to have a super overdrive. So Boss has like a super overdrive. I think it's like $55 now. And you can buy that, or you can buy the Waza, which is like $180, $179, or you can buy a Japanese one on Reverb for like $200. And normally the way that I operate, it's like, I'm just going to buy the Japanese one. But then I sat there and I thought to myself, I was like, dude, what the hell do you need a Japanese one for when you can go buy a brand new Wazacraft that's basically the Japanese SD1 with another mode on it. And I don't want to buy the bargain basement one because I'm smart enough at least to know that I don't want a surface mount one because if I ever want to get it modded, that's never going to work. So that was kind of my thought process. And it's like, that was a clear example of where I went, I'm going to buy this and then kind of backed off. And I didn't actually end up buying one, but it's... People see what they want to see. And I think when people see a professional musician, so like, here's a classic example. I play with the band Old Stumpy, and this will come up in the gig report. But like, I'll buy stuff to get through a gig, and full well knowing like, yeah, I'm going to use this later. Like I'll have use for it later, but I will buy things specifically for that gig. And I don't think anybody in that band has bought gear other than me the entire time I've been in it. I've been in the band, what, year and 8 months?
Yeah, give or take.
Somebody bought a tuner, and one guy was gifted a bass amp.
Somebody needs to buy one of those guys a tuner, but we'll talk about that during your,
You said it, not me. And I'm like, I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, is this weird? Did I play in a band that? So first off, we are amateurs. We are not professionals in any way. So for me, like, I'm kind of looking at that situation and going, yeah, you're the guy that, of course, you're the guy that everybody depends on to sound good. So, you know, you don't mind spending a couple bucks to do something. But like, I'm not buying. So when I bought my PRS, I did not buy my PRS to play an Old Stumpy. Okay. Right. Let's just be totally blunt, honest about that. Old Stumpy is my side gig. And Old Stumpy is like my distant side gig. What I really do is play my own music, and I want to put something together desperately, but I've had shit luck finding people. Because the people that put together my project are not people that you run into every day. And so I'm even kind of thinking like I might start another side project. I'm actually talking about doing a blues standards band. And it's just in the back of my mind, like, I know I can prop that whole thing up. I can sing and I can play the guitar parts. And then I can have, if I have a consistent drummer and bassist, I can bring in a second guitarist or whatever else I want for a particular gig. And then we can go and get dates, and I can get, you know, $300 gigs out the ass playing blues clubs.
In your area, I was going to say, in your area, blues gig would be awesome. Yeah. Literally awesome.
I mean, I know some other guys locally who are doing that, and it's a struggle to get $300 for a gig. But I think it's just an easy thing to do, like to play like blues standards and maybe work in a couple Rolling Stone songs or something, and just roll through like the easiest freaking tunes you can possibly imagine and come out and just do a good job and go home.
That's right.
And like,
you could literally, and I know you've talked about this, you could literally do a Stevie Ray Vaughan or a Jimi Hendrix night, or do like a set of one and a set of the other. Because
I don't play much like either of those guys. I mean, I can play their tunes, but I don't play like them. It would be hard for me to do a tribute thing, but like I could play in the style, you know, like in my style, these tunes, right?
In the style of, that's what I mean.
Yeah, so that's
with your own take.
So that's kind of where I'm at though, in terms of the line in the sand thing. Like, it's really not about how much money I spend. It's not about whether something's cheap or not. It's about whether it meets my needs, right? And whether it excites me, because that's another part of it. Like, the delay llama is more delay pedal than I need, but I'm kind of like, I just get lost in that pedal. I'm like, okay, I can hear the repeats and like I hear what I like out of it, and I'm like, all right. But I could go to a cheaper delay. I can go cheaper on stuff than I do. The question is, should I have to? You shouldn't compromise unless you have to. No, me, I do have one thing though. So I bought a Shengzheng. So I do have a line in the sand. I won't buy guitars that are below a certain quality level, because I'm just going to end up changing everything on them. And that's where that's actually how I wanted to approach this conversation from the beginning, was like, look, when you talk about lower tier instruments, stuff on the lower end of the scale, all I want, this is my line in the sand, is to pick the guitar up and not have to modify it. Okay. And I still have not yet found one that is totally, I didn't have to modify something on it, or I really wish X or Y. So I do go below my standards a lot, but I definitely have had moments where it's like, I know what I want. It just doesn't exist.
I want to say something about that. It excites me. That thing. That is such a good, actually a great way of putting it. I am definitely the person who is not excited to pick up a cheap guitar and play it. It's just not. It doesn't excite me in the least. Now,
well, we could go into the why,
people,
but that's kind of the point of this conversation. You know, that is the conversation.
Look, all right. Let's take it outside of guitars for just a second. Let's talk about your car. When you get in your car, does it excite you to drive? Right? My car kind of does, because it's an Audi. It's a higher end car. It's a lower end, high end.
I think most people,
car.
even young people, can relate to having a nice vehicle, something that's fun to drive.
Right. And it's fun to drive. It has a lot of punch. I can get around people when I need to, and it's leather, and it's got heated seats and cooling and all the stuff it needs to have. And the only thing is, for some reason, I don't know why, people in Audi must not ever drink anything, because the cup holders suck. But other than that, it's great, and I love it. So that's now take it to the guitar. I could buy an Epiphone. I could buy an Epiphone 59.
You have bought Epiphones.
I have, and they didn't excite me. What happened to them?
They got
I returned or sold them.
shipped back.
I returned or sold them. Matter of fact, yeah, I shipped one back to Sweetwater.
And that one is supposed to be amazing.
That people loved. People loved
Yeah, we
it.
got how many hits on that video? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's one of our
more
highest
hits than the
rated
rest
videos.
of the channel. I mean, it was like, whoa.
Even better than my Les Paul.
To the point where Jim and I were having conversations about what cheap guitars should we buy, because it was like this is a no-brainer.
I've literally thought about buying a bunch of shit guitars.
We could drop $1,000 on this channel
and just reselling them.
We could
buy them and resell them.
We could
That's
drop
what a lot of these channels do.
We could drop $1,000 on this channel, and just for our listeners' sake. We could buy a couple of the higher end Epiphones that people really want to see, just like the Joe Bonamassa one. He puts out one every year, by the way, with them.
Yeah.
So you just buy that one.
Released the Lazarus.
All right. Yeah. So if you bought one every year, and we would be able to monetize this channel. So just so everybody knows, we are actually not making any money on YouTube. There's literally no monetization. We're not talking pennies. We're literally not making anything, because in order for us to do that, we have to have 1,000 subscribers, and we have to have a certain amount of views per video, which we don't have. Right. Yeah. And I'm not even concerned about that. That's never been in my mind as we moved into YouTube. It was about expanding the viewer.
Right.
The viewer base.
Right.
But why I'm bringing this up is because we could do that. We could drop $1,000. We've chosen not to, because it doesn't represent us.
That's right. And I could go out, I could literally just take a credit card and a couple of times a month buy a Firefly, do the Firefly videos that everybody else is doing. Everybody's doing them. Take them apart, do the thing, show how good or bad it is, put it back together and sell it.
I'd be monetized. I'd be monetized.
And we'd be monetized. And folks, it wouldn't excite me.
No.
It would not excite me. I'm not driven to come out to this office to sit down
and record
and play a guitar.
Yeah.
That I don't like, that I won't bond with, and then I would just sell.
Well, so at least for some of those guitars, I wouldn't even take them to a gig. And it's if I can't play it at a gig, it's not getting reviewed. Do you know what I mean? That's...
Yeah, for me, it would have to be something that I could say, okay, guys, took the Firefly to a gig this weekend, and here's what happened. I'd be afraid to.
I have joked about taking the Shengzai to Open Jam and playing it one night. And I have never taken that thing out. And I have no desire to do so. because I don't trust it.
Right. Here's the thing for me, and this is where the line in the sand thing comes in. And I think it's important. Everybody's line in the sand is different.
Sure.
Right? Every single one of us.
It's about finding what you're comfortable with.
That's right. If you're sitting at home and you're jamming out, there's nothing wrong with a Firefly. Absolutely nothing wrong with a Firefly. I think it's probably a better investment than this.
I'm sure there are people gigging Fireflies. I'm sure they're out there. And if you're comfortable doing that, more power to you. If you like Lego building guitars where you buy a guitar and you strip all the parts and start from scratch, like more power to you. That's just not me. I want to be able to pick something up off the shelf and be like, this is damn good the way it is. I don't really want to mess with it much. I want to take this out and play it because I want to focus on playing and I want to focus on getting in front of people. And I've had people tell me in the last couple weeks, like, you're focused too much on gear. You need to focus on playing. And they're right because I hadn't been playing as much. Now I'm playing back to playing 2 or 3 hours an evening again. So it's like,
same here.
No big deal. sometimes you got to, keep your eyes on the prize. And you got to be smart enough to, realize that playing is more important than the gear.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but here's what I want to get to that I was talking about with this line in the sand thing and everybody's line being different. Is that the line is chosen by you, and as an individual, you, the listener, the watcher, the viewer, as an individual, you have to pick that line. You don't have to like what I like. It always shocks and amazes me, and I've said this before, that somebody pays $10 during a live feed of Phil McKnight to say, I bought this piece of gear. What do you think of it? Who gives a shit? And I'm sure Phil McKnight is thinking in his mind, he's going, who gives a shit? Do you like it? And he has a nicer way to say what I just said, because he says it every time. Who gives a shit? He said a million I got that guitar and blah, blah, blah. But if you like it, you should play it.
I think I've actually heard him say, do you like it?
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. Who gives it? Did you pay that $10? You could tell 1,000 watchers that you bought one of these guitars?
Yeah. And that's really what it is.
Were you looking for confirmation bias? Oh, please tell me it's as good. And I bought a Spark. Is it as good as you say it is? It's like,
about that.
Yeah. He didn't take it to a gig and play that. He plays it in his bedroom. When you listen to him, he talks about the fact that he has this room and that room and another. He doesn't have 12 Sparks for every room he plays in.
Yeah, right.
He's got one that he likes, and he also has a katana he likes, and so on and so forth. Who cares? He also said he doesn't have a car because he drives his kids or his wife's car because he doesn't need one. He out and out said it. His line in the sand is, I don't use it, I don't want it. And so everybody's got a different line in the sand. And this is what amazes me. Don't look for the confirmation bias. Don't care that I have, that I have a guitar like this or that or the other, and you don't, or you want it and you don't have it, or you don't want it, or you had one and you hated it. I don't care, and you shouldn't care. That's the point. You should be your line, and it should be your decision. I'm not sitting here. Neither one of us is saying don't buy a Firefly. Those things suck. We've never said that ever.
No.
I've said I won't buy a Firefly for me.
I have said I won't recommend it, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to hate you if you have one. I know people that own Harley Benz. I have friends who own Harley Benz. That's how I played them. So, it's fine. Like, if it works for you, no problem. That's what we've always said. So anyway, let's talk about this Doug Pinnick interview.
I think that's important.
Can I share my Doug Pinnick story before we?
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Hit me.
So I went to go see, and I remember the show very vividly. This would have been, I think I was still in high school. I went to see Dream Theater, but who else was on the bill? And this was Joe Satriani.
Oh.
And no, there was no opening band listed on the ticket, I don't think. Okay. And I don't know whether that was just because they were only playing a specific leg of the tour, or if that was just the tickets I got. Ticketmaster didn't put them on it, because it's back in the days of like Ticketmaster and all that. When they were the monopoly. And now that's kind of changed. There's some other companies that have gotten a hold on them. Anyway, so I get to this gig, and first band comes out, and I knew who they were because I'd heard some of their music before, right? Like I'd heard Dogman and stuff like that, and they came out, and I was like, "Oh, King's X!" Like, and actually, I think I might have seen their merch at the table as we were walking in. I'm like, I wonder why they're selling King's X merch here. Because it just didn't occur to me that like, oh, there might be three bands. Yeah. There might be three bands. So they come out, right? And I believe he was still using, we'll talk about, who's the guitar player in the band? I forget what his name is offhand. The guy he plays Gibson Lab Series amps. Well, he used to anyway. With a Line 6 pod or something.
Yep.
And he was fantastic, right? And they brought that place down. There was no stage show. Them, fog machines, and like very little lighting. And Doug Pinnick, I can remember Ty Tabor. Yeah. And I can remember seeing Doug Pinnick on stage and going, who the hell is that guy? Because his bass was at his knees. Now, if you've never seen Doug looks like a spider. Okay. Yeah. This dude,
very thin,
like gangly, and his arms are like really long. And he's playing this bass at his knees like nobody's business. And it's just so loud and it's so heavy. And I'm like, what on God's green earth? I had no idea what I was watching. I was like, I knew I liked these guys from, the music I had acquired over the years from other people, but I had no idea like what I was witnessing. So then that ends up, Satriani comes out, he plays his set. I was not a big Satriani fan, and at that time, and I think I've talked about this performance on the show before, he was having a bad night, basically. And I've always joked that he was drunk. I have no idea what was going on with him that night, but it was not a great night for him. He did not inspire me. Now, I think older me would probably have like sat through that and kind of picked it apart a little bit differently and probably would have enjoyed it. But I was like, okay, whatever. Dream Theater comes out. Dream Theater does their thing. And, like they put on a little bit of a show, but it was like mostly about the music. So I was like, you guys should just kind of just play your music. It's fine. Because I just watched King's X just totally demolish the place as a power trio, Yep. And then of course Dream Theater's got like 5 people in the band or 6 people in the band, and you're going, this is a little bit different. So then Ty comes out, not Ty, Doug comes out and he does a duet with James LaBrie, which was wild. Because if you know Dream Theater, like James LaBrie is a really great singer, but he's an opera singer. And then Doug comes from like the rock and roll, like 60s and blues background. And he comes out and they're singing the song together. And I think it was, I don't remember which song it was. It was one of the ones off of the Images and Words that I know because I knew it really well. And I was like, I just sat there and I was like, wow, I walking away from that show, the 2 headliners, I could have given 2 shits. Like I honestly, that kind of killed Dream Theater for me. Cause it was like, I have no desire to see him live again. It wasn't a great show. It was okay. It wasn't great. Yeah. And Satriani wasn't great, but King's X, I'm like, I see them come to Arcada every year and I'm like, which is a venue near me. And I'm like, I wonder what I'm doing that night. Cause I'm like, I want to go see them again. Cause they just killed it. And I almost guarantee they still sound that good. Cause those guys have just honed their craft and they're not trying to be something they're not. It's just dead on, So anyway, take it away. You saw an interview with Doug Pinnick on Phil McKnight.
Right. And so he's talking about his new 4-string because he used to play a 12-string. So he was playing a similar thing to the guy from, believe it or not, Cheap Trick. He played a 12-string guitar.
Well, yeah. And you mean bass, right?
Bass. That's what I meant. Bass.
He had a 10-string when I saw him.
Yeah, and he played with a pick. So anyway, he and Schecter have come out with a semi-hollow. I think he's trying to lighten up. He's getting a little older, and he's very thin and gangly, as you said. His arms go practically to his knees. I mean, the guy is just
Yeah.
and his arms are only like this big around.
He would have made an incredible swimmer.
Yeah. And so anyway, he I think because of his back, honestly, but he's playing a 4-string. He's playing this black Schecter, which is really cool and really nice. And so I liked it because Phil McKnight asked him, "Why did you go? Your rig is so less expensive."
Yeah, it's
and
inexpensive.
He goes, "Is that because you wanted to?" He was leading him with the question. He was doing the CNN leading question, right? So he goes, "Is that because you wanted to make it more affordable for your audience?" And you know what? Ty said something that you never hear these guys admit. He goes, "Well, we're just not that famous, so I didn't get a lot of money for him." So to be honest with you, I could have asked for more money, but then it would have cost more money. And he goes, "So we looked at the marketing, and I'm not that famous, so nobody cares about getting a Ty Tabor.
Doug Pinnick,
Doug Pinnick bass." And he goes, "So, we looked at, I'm getting a little piece of each one sold and blah, blah, blah." But he was very open and honest about, "I'm just not that big a name. So you get to go with the."
I have heard stories over the years of people, and it's interesting that he's not that big a name because, like, if you've seen those guys, there's a reason that people still talk about King's X.
Right.
But it's just really interesting because he is probably one of those players that's probably really influential for like prog rock and that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's a market for him, but like I sort of expected his answer to be like, "Well, there was more money in it for me." And honestly, we felt that the quality, because you could split that and say the quality of the instruments was good enough and there was more money for me, so it made sense. And I have heard that certain people have offered their signature instruments at a specific price point to line pockets. Now, of course, Jimmy Vaughn says that he did it because he had the first Mexican signature Fender, right? And Jimmy Vaughn says he did it because he wanted to make sure his guitar was available to anybody who wanted it. Right. That's a nice way of saying, I want to make sure that I get my royalties from every guitar sold.
That's right.
And he actually was trying to do the same thing with the Stevie Ray Vaughan model as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Here's the funny part. So the Doug Pinnick Schecter that existed before, still available.
Yeah.
I had no idea of this thing until I just clicked it. So it's a 12-string Schecter for $1,200, $1,250. I think that's damn good.
Yeah. That's a good price. That's a good price for that.
12-string bass. That's a damn good deal. And then he's got it's Tech 21's Doug Pinnick thing.
Right. He's got a fly rig or something.
Yep, a fly rig type thing. It's the exact same thing. I don't know if it doesn't say fly, but it's the same thing. And the Doug Pinnick one, $300.
Yeah.
I mean, to be completely honest with you, the guy isn't, and it's got the XLR out and everything else. That's not a lot of money. That's pretty good. You could buy his whole rig. You could be Doug Pinnick on stage for $1,500 or $1,600 with tax. Yeah, that's pretty damn good. And the guy, like I said, I thought that it was good that he admitted, "Hey, you know what? I'm not trying to milk this because here's somebody. I love Gibson, but I'm gonna bash the recent." So Slash models come out. They're no better than the Epiphones that are sitting next to them, that are regular ones, and you can buy a case for an Epiphone that's sitting there and it doesn't say Slash on it. But guess what? You can save a couple $100. So to me, the Slash model Epiphones are the biggest waste of money you could spend. Now the Lazarus is actually a good one. It's $50 extra, but it's a 1-piece neck versus a 3-piece neck or 2-piece neck that the 59 has, and it's got the Gibson pickups in it, and it's got the hard shell case. So it's actually cheaper than the Slash one, which I thought was funny.
I don't think it's funny. Slash is a bigger name.
Slash is. You're absolutely right. That's exactly what I was going to. And so Slash is probably getting $150, $200 a guitar.
Could be.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think it's probably less than that, but he's selling a significantly higher volume anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I
agree.
So I would think that the proposition here, of course, becomes, I think most people who are professionals who end up with a signature guitar, because not everybody gets them, right?
Right.
I think most people are sort of more on the side of you can use my name and attach it. I just want to make sure I get, you flowing me instruments specifically for touring and stuff. But there are definitely people out there that are trying to make money off of it. And actually the guy that comes to mind is Steve Vai. So I don't know if you knew this or not. He comes out with Pia, right? They're no longer making a Japanese gem. There is no high-end gem anymore.
Oh. So it's just a Pia?
I think it's like an Indo gem or just the Gem Junior.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which tells me he knows demand is still going to be higher for the gem. And his profit ratio is probably easier to manage. And the company is also in alignment with that. It's probably easier to manage and in a lower end guitar. I would highly suspect. Steve's not a dumb guy. Steve's always been good at business. So I have a very strong feeling that a lot of the Pia motivation was about getting people to be interested in the guitar again. Not just because of the 30th anniversary, or 35th anniversary, whenever it got unveiled, but because it was kind of we've really sort of tapped out the market at $3,500, Steve. What can we do now? How do we get those guys to buy another one? And so he's still got the low end of the market holding everything else down, to just kind of pay bills from the Ibanez endorsement. The Ibanez endorsements were very, very, very lucrative back in the early 90s to mid 90s when Vai and Satch and Paul Gilbert got on board with them. I don't know what they look like now. But at that time, they were willing to put some money behind some pro players, which is why. So I know that and believe me, I want to believe the stories that Steve tells about. The prototype is the one that I play now and that kind of stuff. I'm sure that's probably still true, but it's dude, we know you went with them partially because the deal was good. Because even if they did what you asked them, if the deal had sucked, you wouldn't have taken it. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't have taken it. Now, of course, he was asking for weird stuff, and Ibanez did it. So that's a whole other animal. But I just think it's interesting. We tend to forget that's a business proposition. So, do you want to talk about the Adam Jones tool, Les Paul, as part of this? So
sure.
They did the custom shop run, right?
Yep, they've done a third run.
They've done a third run now, which should tell you something. That's been very lucrative for Gibson. And so they're going to make more
of them.
I'm
sure Adam Jones. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's every time Adam goes, every time they want to run it, do another run of them, he's like, all right, thumbs up, let's do it. And I'm just kind of surprised they haven't made this a production model yet.
Well, I'm 100% sure we're going to see
it's coming.
Run.
It's
but
coming.
Remember, it's a Les Paul custom. So you got to kind of put that into perspective. So if they go with a regular production, a custom is already now a full.
Is it
$46.99?
It's a custom,
$49.99.
But does it carry the same prestige as the white and black custom? So 70s silver burst custom.
Yeah. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about that. So what they've done is a one that's an exact replica. It's got all the scratches and everything else.
Right.
That was $12,000, and then you can still get them for $18,000, $20,000 if you want one. Everybody that wants to make fun of my guitar's prices. Then they came out with one that was $10,000 or something, and that was the one that was VOS.
That was the
And
first
that was-
controversial one where people were like, seriously, you're doing another run of these, even though
Right.
the first run
Right.
sold out and like, yeah.
Yep. And so this is the one that doesn't have any scratches and everything else. It's not aged in the
This
least.
is the brand new, basically period correct
Right.
silver burst.
And so now you've got one that bridges the gap. You've got the lightly aged, right? So now you've got the lightly aged one. This might be the $10,000 one.
Yeah,
The
I think
lightly
this is the
aged
$10,000 one, yeah.
Where it's kind of aged, but not really. So that they can still say, yeah, you've got, because they're only doing 79. Remember, it was 1979. Yeah, the thing was 79. They did 100 of the VOS, I think. But the aged and slightly aged are 79 each. So they're still, they know they know, let's keep these numbers minimal enough that people are going to buy them. And there's some people who are collectors who are going to buy, they're going to buy all three.
They're going to have the set and say, I have all three of them.
That's right.
That's what they're banking on. But it's a money thing. That's why that happened.
Right. Here's what I think the production run will be. There will be, right now, the black Les Paul Custom is $49.99. The white Les Paul Custom is $54.99. To bridge that gap, I think they'll come in closer to the white Les Paul Custom than the black Les Paul Custom, because what they'll do is they'll put Adam Jones on it, and the only real difference, I think, this is me, because they've already done this with the new
unless
one.
the production model drops the binding, the custom binding.
Right, unless it drops custom binding. I think what they're going to do is they're going to put his name on it, right? That is going to be the thing that adds $200 or $300 to the price. Okay, from $49.99 to a $52.99, let's say, guitar. Because I don't think they really want to make white ones. I think that's why they made them $54.99. It's just ridiculous to say, I want a white one instead of a black one, and I'm willing to pay $500 more for it. I don't think that's realistic.
White is actually an easier finish to do too, which is really funny.
Yeah, so I think that they just want to get out of the white model for a while. I think that's why they did that. But that's my take on it. I could be dead wrong. But anyway, I think that the Adam Jones will do that. And here's the key. So they'll say the new Adam Jones one that's coming out, if I remember, and I'd have to check, I think it's got the exact same pickups as the regular custom. $490, $498.
Yeah, which not even special pickups.
Which means it's a custom with aged look of the Adam Jones, slightly aged look of the Adam Jones. It does not have Adam Jones pickups in it. I don't think. I could be wrong about that. I watched so many of these things. I could be wrong. I'd have to check.
I hinted at it, but I'm just going to say it again. I don't think we're going to get a custom. I think when the production model shows up, it won't have the custom binding. It won't have the custom inlay. It will be.
And they'll put it at $3,000.
Yeah, it'll be a $3,000, whatever's in line with other artist model guitars, and it'll basically be the same guitar otherwise.
Right.
So that's my 2 cents.
You don't think that they'll do the custom, the custom shop custom?
No,
that's what this is. It's a custom.
No, and if they did, it'll be some tricky thing where they can get around having to devalue the customs, because the reality is, unless it's a custom shop custom, it doesn't really matter what the price is, because it's not worth. I mean, a custom shop custom is not worth like $3,800 or whatever. It's worth whatever standard is plus $50 or $100, because really the only difference is the binding and the inlays. So that's why I'm like, when I hear some people talk about like the custom shop customs, and they're like, oh, it's got a 498T in it, and I'm like, that's like the same thing in the standard. Like, what the hell?
The difference between the honest difference in being someone who owns that custom and custom shop, it's just the regular standard and the custom shop.
Fit and finish is a big part of it.
Fit and finish. It was made in another. It's more supposedly more handmade.
Yeah. Well,
because it's built in
you know how I feel about that now.
I know. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's one of the differences.
Yes.
It does have 5-ply binding versus 1-ply binding. It's got prettier stuff. It's got gold versus whatever. It's got block inlays versus whatever. It's got the diamond. It's got the Gibson logo isn't a different thing. I'll be completely honest
mostly aesthetic.
And here's the negative side. It's weight relieved.
Yeah.
and it'll have a plain top.
Yep.
Because they're spraying it with a color.
Right.
So the fact is, if they come out with what you're saying is like a Les Paul standard type thing.
Yeah, an Adam
I
Jones
don't
Les
think
Paul
they
standard.
will. And here's, they might. I don't think they will. And here's why I don't think they will. But I could be wrong. And I've been wrong about a lot of things. They could, all it would be is a standard with the right paint job. Because remember, his Les Paul is a custom. That's what the whole thing is. That's the whole crux.
But we just said
Slashes,
customs aren't really that different than the regular guitar, other than aesthetic details.
Right. Slash's Les Paul was a 59 copy, right? We all know that. It's not a Gibson. So we all know that the Appetite for Destruction guitar was not a Gibson. So his favorite guitar is not a Gibson guitar.
Right.
It's a copy made by a man that killed himself with nitro. I mean,
yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a very sad thing. I didn't laugh because I thought it was funny. I laughed as it's kind of stupid. But would they really come out with if they came out with a standard version of his guitar, it means all they're doing is taking a Les Paul standard, painting it, silver burst, and now you've got standard inlay, standard everything else, and you wouldn't even, I mean, you might come up with a Adam Jones pickup line and then say, okay, there's a $300 or $400 surcharge for that. I mean, that's really all you got now for Slash. Slash's pickups or Slash's guitar did not go up in price. Of all the darn guitars that didn't go up in price, Slash guitars did not go up in price.
No, because they can't sell them.
$29.99.
Because they can't sell them. Because they're not any better than their inexpensive counterparts.
Yeah.
You're not the first person who's told me that. So
yeah.
Anyway, all right, we're gonna switch gears. We're gonna go to the gig report.
Yep.
So it's customary that I've been going first. Do you want me to go first tonight, or would you like to go first?
I can go first because mine's going to be real short.
All right, go for it.
So I played the church today. So I took the Kemper to the church. Again, it was a very easy guitar in one hand, Kemper and the cables in the other. Walked in the church, did my gig. I created a padded sound with some phase. I put some phaser and some delay and reverb. Literally stacked all those together because they have an acoustic guitar player there. So I was kind of doing that, and then I had like a raw kind of distorted sound for one of the songs. Now, again, I've said this about the. There are people who play these kind of gigs and they do more than 3 songs, but you're really only playing 3 or 4 songs a week. I still marvel at that. But anyway, the point is that it was a nice, easy gig. It was easy to get in and out of, and it went really well. I had a lot of people, other than the drummer. Only thing I could hear is Jim's guitar. And I'm like, you have control of your monitor. Shut up and change it. That's the only thing that came out. Okay, the floor is yours.
All right, before we go on, I caught where my family actually lives in Indiana. There's a news site that for the local town paper, and somebody decided to stick their church's live stream in there. I watched about 15 seconds of it and I shut it off. And it wasn't because of like religious opposition or anything. I'm fine with, whatever religion. I actually am pretty open to a lot of different religions, but I just I heard their drummer and I was like, oh. So when you said the drummer joke, I just it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't blame them. Yeah, a lot of churches don't have great drummers. Man, have I got a gig report for this week? So we played.
Wait, before we go any further, I got to make corrections because people are gonna run out and say this. Okay, so the Adam Jones VOS was $59.99, and the custom aged and hand signed, was $9.99.
Yeah,
I conflate the prices with the used prices because people buy them and then sell them for almost double what they are.
they
So
were
that's
never
why
going to.
that's why my numbers are that high. So I apologize.
All right. So this is a gig for you, let me tell you. So we played the Raccoon birthday party, and so this all started like, I think last week I talked about the fact that I almost went to this gig early, because like a week early because I had the dates wrong. But so I went back and forth over the last week about like whether I'm playing electric or acoustic. Thursday night, I played my acoustic. I played about 8 songs in the set, and I go, I am not doing acoustic this weekend. My hands just could not handle it because I've been playing so much guitar lately. Like they're in this constant state of like just like crushing Coke cans. It's ridiculous. So I was like, I'm going to get really tired out if I have to play through barred chords on a couple of songs. And I can't do this. So I was like, I got to come up with an electric solution. So I grabbed my my trusty Behringer 2-amp emulator and plugged it into my PA cab, my battery powered PA cab. Futzed around with it here at the house. And I actually turned it up. It was like 8 o'clock at night. I'm in a condo and I turned it up pretty good. And I was like, oh, well, it doesn't sound great, but it's passable. So I took my pedal board and I took my ethos down off the wall and I put a battery in it. I went to the store and I bought brand new batteries, brand new 9 volts. I actually went to go buy lithiums. So I found lithium 9 volt batteries. Take a guess what a lithium 9 volt costs, Jim.
$12.
$16.
Jeez, I'm crow. Okay.
So I ended up buying regular 9 volts. And I did a little bit of research and I found the guy's article that says brand new 9 volts should last like 15 hours in the ethos, which has not been my experience. But I'm guessing that the last couple of times I put a battery in it, probably wasn't fresh. I got lent a battery from someone. I've been using I think I showed them last week, these 9 volt GI super heavy duty batteries, which are not designed for, modern applications. These are really bad carbon zinc batteries. I do like them in my fuzz pedals, so that's why I keep them around. And I'll throw them in drives and stuff in a pinch. Anyway, put that on a board with my Delay Llama and the Univibe. Which Univibe am I using right now? Oh, the Vibe Machine. That fancy, expensive one I just bought, and then they came out with a new version like the next day.
Of course.
So, which
2 weeks later,
which I'm probably gonna get. Which honestly, I'm probably gonna get that one too. I just haven't. I haven't. The urge has not struck me yet. I'll probably end up buying it at some point.
Right.
So, I reached out to the band, told them I was playing electric. Nobody said anything. Great. Showed up at the show. I was there about an hour early. Oh, well, let's start earlier. So I'm just going to give you the no holds barred version of this. And there's going to be some emotion attached. And I apologize if any of my band members are listening, but I'm pissed. Like that was not a really good way to handle it, especially if you're the band leader. I'm sorry. I know that this sounds callous, but I really don't care that you got up late. I don't. Dude, I got up and drove to a gig. I got up at 5 a.m. and I left the house at 6 o'clock to get to a gig for you. And so the story was, I'm going to be late. I will be there at 11:15. We start at 11:30. So I'm like, if you get pulled over or anything happens to you on the road coming up here, you're going to get stuck. And I'm just like, man, I had a positive attitude. I said, like, the hell with it. It's not a big deal. I'll do cover tunes for 20 minutes or something and rescue this gig if I have to. I know there's other members of this band that may not be down with that, but it's like, dude, if I'm getting paid, we're going to entertain some folks. That's how it's going to work. So anyway, I get in the car and I drive up there and I run into our bass player. He's already there. And I see his big bass amp there and I'm going, how are they going to, because I've talked about this on the show before. They run off car batteries in this kind of scenario. I'm like, how are they going to run that thing off a car battery? Well, then I look and there's a fucking generator sitting there. Nobody told me there was a generator. I asked. So this is, I'm going to put somebody on blast again. I asked specifically, is there going to be power? And I was told no.
No. Yep.
And then I get there and there's a generator sitting there.
Yep. So
I address this later. I won't bring it up on the podcast, but basically somebody didn't ask, and I was told they asked. So I'm a little frustrated at that point because I could have had a much better day if I had known, but I made the most of it. I did what any good gigging guitar player does. I just said, you know what, let's roll with the punches. So I rolled my little bitty 10-inch speaker. I don't even know if it's a 10. It might even be an 8 Behringer with a tweeter. And I hooked it up and I did a little bit of sound check and I was like, oh God, this is not going to be loud enough. When we played with this before, we were in kind of a weird place where there was a wall behind us. And so it could bounce off the wall and forward. There's nothing behind us. We were playing in the middle of a basketball court. So I was like, well, man, this is going to be fun. Drummer shows up. He starts playing a little bit. I got a little bit of the guitar going against the drummer. And I was like, well, you can hear me over the drums. So I guess that's the best I can do. Our band leader shows up at, I would say 5 minutes after 11. So he's there a little bit early and he's loading up his cart and he brought his PA. Now, he was planning to run his PA off of car batteries. Let me just put this out there for everybody. Think about that. Think about that silently to yourself. He's going to run his PA off of car batteries. Now, I am ticked off enough that I'm like, I need to go. I was actually hanging out with my wife over on the side. I was like, I need to go stand over here right now. Because at this point, like they're hooking it up to the generator. And at this point, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to help them set up. I do all of my own setup and tear down my own. And I'm a paid player here. And quite frankly, there are members of this band that have like literally not spent a dime on gear except for what came out of the band funds to do it since I've been a part of it. And I'm like kind of ticked off about it because I'm like, you know what? I would put my effort in. I brought an extra microphone for someone. I brought extra cables. I set up their mic stand for them because I was like, they're not going to get here in time to do it. So I just kind of was like, why am I shouldering the responsibility? I'm the hired gun. So I just kind of just like walked off and was like sitting and chilling for a little bit. And then we started to get ready and like their sound checks. So I come walking back over and like started playing a little bit and I tuned up and we got through. Now, Jim, you've seen the clip. So I think actually this is probably an appropriate place to stop and to propose that you tell me what you saw and tell me what your impression of things was. And then I'll give you some insight as to what was going on because you've seen the clips.
Yeah, sure. What I saw, honestly, was somebody was definitely playing out of tune. And it banged against everyone else. I won't say who because
you really can't tell who's out of tune. But I know who is out of tune.
Right. And I saw 4 guys. I saw 4 people who were relatively boring. Now don't get me wrong. First of all, I want to put some positive stuff on here because this is important, I think. I thought that the original tune that y'all do about the trees. Yeah. Some trees looking at you or something.
Yeah, these trees are looking at me.
Yeah, I love that song. I
have a good time with that. We did a music video for that one. It's fun. I like that song.
It's a fun song. It's a fun song. It's a funny song. I could tell there was one guy standing over on the side. I won't say who was having a blast. Who was literally He's on this side of the screen, by the way, for me, for guys.
Yeah, I'm down here.
Yeah, okay. The guy down here. He was having a blast playing, okay? And he was leading the band and pulling it together. I heard a lot of the drum and the bass, not really like, there was a little bit of this.
There's some friction.
Yep. Where they could have been together a little better and a little tighter. But for the most part, I saw one person trying really hard and four guys phoning it in. That's what I saw. That was my impression of it.
Okay? I don't know how to phone it in. And Jim,
they need a phone. I don't know.
Jim, this is what I want to point out to you though. So like, I just told you how pissed off I was. The circumstances leading up to this. When I put the guitar on, I get my game face on, and everything changes because I'm not worried about what happened getting in here. I'm not worried. It's zen. I'm not worried about what happened coming in. I'm not worried about what's going to happen at the end of it. I'm just going to play, and I'm going to focus and try to do the best freaking job I can. Now, so the tuning thing. This is how I know I wasn't out of tune, folks. I checked my tuning every single song for the first 7 songs because I had my tremolo bar attached to the guitar, and I was kind of in the mindset that like it's probably me because I bump that or I grab it and I use it for chords and stuff. And every single time my guitar was in tune. So I'm sitting there, and at some point I just kind of went, it's not me. It's somebody down on the other side. Now I want to point something out. There's another thing that's really weird about this band. We stand in weird places. Like I'm further apart, and everybody always says like, why is this guy like off to himself? I bring my own music. It's on a stand. It's on an iPad. And I bring a mic stand for it. Okay, that I don't even have a mic in this band because I don't sing for this band. They want me to sing and not pay me more. But I was like, okay, I'll have my sheet music over here, and they have their own copy of the sheet music, but it's one copy for the other 3 guys that need it. And I'm going, number one, most of these songs are 1-4-5. They're country songs, or they're not even country. I would consider them to be like classic folk songs. And then some of these songs are they're standards, like Don't You Forget About Me. Like once you played it a couple times, you should be good. Margaritaville, I'm off book with that now. And that kind of stuff. Like I kind of, which we played the most punk rock Margaritaville ever. I wish somebody had gotten it on film. It was hilarious. Fun. Yeah. Cause I was doing all this triplet crap over it. And it was hilarious. It sounded like Iron Maiden playing, it did. It sounded like Iron Maiden playing that song. It was hilarious. And so we got through the gig, right? It's not a huge deal. Like nobody was mad. There was like 200 or 300 people there. Cause it's a big outdoor thing where it's Fall Fest. So like they had a corn maze, blow up corn maze, and they had a big bouncy house for the kids. And which, listen, I have my reservations cause it's COVID season, and it's like people without masks, right up next to each other. Like it's all over. And I'm just like, I'm glad that you feel comfortable with this. Cause I have a little bit of guilt. I'm like, I don't want to put other people in that position, and I don't want to encourage people to be in that position either. But I'm like, I'm a musician. This is what I do. So, but there was like 300 people there. Most of the people were watching us, which was kind of cool. But, we didn't have to sing the Raccoon Birthday Party song this year. We didn't have to do Happy Birthday for them, which is kind of nice because they came out at the end, like as we were wrapping up. It was a good event. Like, now a couple comments. Gear wise, my gear sucked. So the ethos was fine, but the problem was the clean sound is not compressed in that at all. So it's all transient. So it'll just store a PA if it's plugged in directly, even with the cabinet emulation on. So I was running into situations where like I was clipping my mic input, and my amp was turned pretty much all the way up, and I was still having problems. I was still struggling to be heard. It was a bad situation. I know I gave a good recommendation to this product earlier, and I think for certain situations it's still probably worth it, but I wish I'd bought the Bose one. But that said, it's a lot of money, and for, you know, a very specific thing. Now, if I get an HX Stomp and the Bose thing, I mean, I'm unstoppable. I can play anywhere for anybody at any time. So that's kind of nice. And that's kind of a thought I've had in the back of my mind. But just walking out of this situation, I didn't get into it with anybody. I got paid. And I was kind of like, this is the first time I've actually kind of voiced my disapproval with what was going on. And actually my wife knew about it because we sort of talked about it. And she goes, why do you put up with this? Why do you keep doing this? And I kind of told her, I was like, well, I mean, what else am I going to do right now? Because I'm like, I don't have another situation going. And it's like, This is not great, but at least it keeps my chops up. And I get a chance to get in front of people every once in a while, and maybe it leads to something else.
Right.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, maybe it leads to something else. And I think the band is starting to realize I am the ace in the hole that they thought I would be. I've had people that are friends of the family, because it's basically a family band. I've had friends of the family come up and say, like, they need to play with you, like that they need to stay working with you. And that's a very good compliment to get, but it's also kind of like, well, I'm not as great as you think I am. And it's just, they need to work harder, and like, they need to put in a little bit more effort. And if they put in a little bit more effort, man, they could book a lot of gigs. And if they wrote more songs like these, you know, trees, we call it trees. And they can write that kind of stuff because they're both improv comics. Like, I honestly think we could have something going on, but it would require effort. And this is somebody who I found out right after the show was over, basically didn't get out of bed. That's why they were late to the gig. They did not wake up. And when they did wake up, they're like, oh, I can sleep for 15 more minutes. And 15 more minutes was actually an hour. And it's like, well, wait a minute. 15 more minutes versus an hour. Dude, you didn't even leave any gap for blown tire, or, you know, it's like, what are you doing, dude? You're the band leader. You are supposed to be the one that is the most reliable.
Yep.
If I don't show up, they can play a gig without me.
Right.
If he doesn't show up, we're screwed.
That's right.
So that's why I was like, actually what he said was like, and this kind of struck me as odd too. They were having a little powwow and talking, and he goes, man, he's like, I thought I'd overslept, and I thought I just missed the gig. And it was like, no big deal. I just missed the gig. No big deal. Well, everybody else would have been sitting here. Don't you think that's kind of a big deal? You know, and not only that, but you just let a business contact down. You're never going to get a gig around here again, because that's going to get passed around, like in the city, that like you just didn't show up, and that's not okay. And I don't want my name attached to that. Nope. That I mean, obviously, reputationally, like they're not going to know who I am, but they're going to know who he is because he's the contact. So that's where I'm like, that kind of sucks. And to put other people in that position, like, it's just be more responsible. Be an adult, you know?
Yeah.
I know how old he is. He's almost my age. He needs to be an adult. And that's the least adult thing you could have done. And I mean, I have other thoughts about behaviors and stuff that have gone on in that situation, but none of them that I would say you have to stop doing this. But like that, you put me in a bad situation in that case. You put everybody in the band in a bad situation in that case. And I'm just not happy with it. So it's fine. I'll continue to play gigs. I got a gig booked with them on, I think, 12/23. So We'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll make some decent money that night. I know that there's not a whole lot of future in this, and this is like, for me, it's just like a come and you go thing. They've all said, like, if you decide you don't want to do it anymore, you don't have to do it anymore, and nobody's gonna be mad or anything. So, at some point, I will have other engagements, and I won't be able to make it, and that'll be the end of that. And so that's fine. I'm not even like frustrated in the least. I know there have been times where I've gone back and forth and been like, I don't want to be replaced and that kind of thing. But like, I honestly don't really have that feeling right now. I feel like some of this is more hassle than it's worth. So, and I've been that way with other projects I've been involved in too, where it's like, man, I tried really hard for a really long time to put up with a lot of shit and I just couldn't handle it. So I think everybody has that breaking point. Anyway, that's my gig report. And yeah, so we ready to wrap up?
I think so.
All right. I've been David.
I've been Jim.
And tonight we've been the Practical Guitars.